Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Hagoromo gave all chakra to Naruto Sasuke bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by KAKASHI97 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto or any other characters except for the ones I created mentioned in this story. I do not make any profits from writing this story either. He was running on the rooftops of the buildings in the village like a maniac. His long hair flying back along with his new medium-length side bangs. His orange half-sleeves kimono with black flame trimmings was open, revealing his sculpted physique under the full sleeves mesh armor. The tiles started to crack under the pressure, though his foot barely touched them. The force behind each step he took should be enough to tell us how important it was for him to reach his destination as soon as possible. The villagers stared at him with a mixture of alarm and shock. It's not every day you see the hero of the fourth great ninja war running around the village like his life depending on it. Though they knew how energetic their beloved blonde hero was, this was an entirely different Naruto that they are seeing right now. But Naruto didn't care what others would be thinking of him. He didn't have the time to think about such a trivial thing. He had to reach his destination. And soon. He could see it. The Hokage Tower in all its red glory. With kanji for fire on the top of the building, the Hokage Tower was a building which can be seen from the village gates too. And for the first time, he wished he knew his father's Hiraishin jutsu. He never needed that in the first place because he can rival the Hiraishin speed with Kurama's chakra mode. But using it now would raise too many alarms. And also, he felt like it would be abusing the mighty beast's power by using it now. Though this wasn't a life or death situation, he really wanted to reach the office quick. He ran straight to the office, taking the stairs, neglecting the Chunin guard's attempts to stop him. He flung open the door which cracked against the wall, drawing the attention of the occupants of the room. His breathing was labored and erratic. He looked straight into the onyx eyes which he hadn't seen in almost 2 years. "The change," noted Naruto, noticing the Sasuke made a few changes to himself. Sasuke now sported a tattered light brown poncho which covered his upper body and reached until his knees. He wrapped bandages around his ankles and a blue sash around his head which bent his hair down, covering his left eye. No more chicken butt hair. Sasuke and Kakashi just stared at him for a while before the latter decided to break the silence. Is there something I can help you with, Naruto?" he asked, feigning innocence. He knew exactly why the blonde was here. He tried to keep the arrival of Sasuke a secret from everyone. Not even Shizune, who was assisting him with all his duties as the 6th Hokage, knew about this meeting. But his plan failed. But how did he know that Sasuke was here? He shouldn't be anywhere near the gates to know Sasuke's arrival. "I was told he was in a training in one of the training grounds," then it struck him, sage mode, huh? Damn. He's getting too good at this. If Naruto knows, then it won't be long before Sakura is here too, and speaking of the devil. "Sasuke?" gasped Sakura, who just entered the scene. She was still in her hospital robes. She too, like Naruto, was panting hard. The result of running with all her might halfway through the village. "Sakura, Naruto. What are you guys doing here?" he drawled out as if he didn't care about them. Sakura's heart clenched hearing those words. 2 years. It's been 2 years since he left the village on his penance trip. And not a greeting or word from him since then. And when he finally returns, those were his first words. Naruto, on the other hand, reacted a little different from Sakura. He walked toward Sasuke, held him by his collar and pushed him against the wall. "You bastard. You disappear for 2 years without a word, and the first thing you say after we see each other is that." He seethed, not out of anger but disappointment. "Naruto," called Kakashi. A little commanding than usual. Let him go. This is supposed to be a secret meeting. So let him go and leave the room. Now. He ordered. Kakashi hated ordering people around. It just wasn't his style. It was even worse when it came to people he was close with. But Naruto was the only exception. Because it was the only way he could stop the blonde from doing something reckless. As much as he hated commanding people, he didn't mind it much in case of Naruto. As a matter of fact, he was thankful. He often wondered how much more difficult his job would be if the Hokage didn't have absolute authority over the village shinobi. Naruto reluctantly set Sasuke free. When Sasuke just walked past him without a word, rather unruffled by Naruto's near manhandling, the blonde couldn't stop himself from punching the wall in frustration. He hated when Kakashi used the Hokage card over him. Sakura too hung her head low with a little disappointment. "As I was saying, I found something important. A scroll, possibly written by that Otsutsuki. The Sage of Six Paths," Sasuke said, looking at Kakashi. This caught the attention of everyone present in the room. All members of the Team 7 remained quiet for a moment before Kakashi spoke up. "That is quite interesting. But where did you find it, I wonder?" I mean, what are the chances of a lone wanderer finding a scroll filled with various types of jutsu of unimaginable power, written by the god of shinobi world himself? The masked Hokage mused. He knew it wasn't a mere coincidence. Sasuke was a bit hesitant to answer for a second. But the look in Kakashi's eyes made it clear that he wanted answers. So he decided to tell him what happened. It happened when I was trying to master my newly gained power. The Rinnegan opened a portal to another dimension. So I entered to check where it leads to. It was a different world, completely devoid of everything. It was then that I saw an altar with a scroll on top of it. It was covered by a barrier seal though. A barrier seal, huh? What kind of a barrier? Naruto interjected, his curiosity getting the better of him. The remaining three gave him a stern glare to which he responded by raising his hands in defeat. Sasuke just shook his head and continued. I was hesitant to make a move at first, but the altar had something written on it. Instructions on how to undo the barrier seal. But it wasn't written in any normal language. It was similar to the language that the stone tablet in the Naka shrine. So someone only with a Rinnegan can completely understand the instructions to undo the barrier seal. Even the Manjutsu Sharingan couldn't get it completely correct. It is indeed an ingenious way to protect something highly valuable. Kakashi spoke his mind, to which Sasuke just nodded in approval. Naruto just huffed in response. So what if he has the Rinnegan? Still acting all stuck up, he thought. Sakura on her part was listening intently on every word that was being spoken. She was one of the very few who faced an Otsutsuki before in the Fourth Shinobi War. She still sometimes has nightmares about Kagaya destroying the whole world. The war had such an effect on people. And if something is even remotely related to the word Otsutsuki, then it means business. But I think there's more to it. Sasuke said, getting a raised eyebrow from the sixth Hokage in response. He took it as a cue for him to continue his explanation. I think it can't be read by the Rinnegan either. This left an uneasy feeling in the occupants of the room. But, what do you mean? You have the scroll with you, don't you? Then how is that possible? Naruto questioned with disbelief written all over his face. He very well knew how powerful the Rinnegan was. He faced it more times than he would like to. Just to think that there's something even beyond the Rinnegan was a startling revelation. Just let me finish, dope. I think the contents on the altar cannot be comprehended by the normal Rinnegan which Madara and Nagato possessed. However, my Rinnegan is a little different from theirs. I have 6 Tomo pattern within my Rinnegan. All 3 of them looked a little surprised at that. They did notice that fact before, but never gave it any thought. Who would have thought that the Rinnegan too had different types in it like the Sharingan? Naruto really hoped that Sasuke wasn't just trying to brag about his visual prowess now. Though he knew that the present Sasuke wouldn't do that, he had hoped to be proven wrong. Unlike Madara, I didn't awaken the Rinnegan myself. That Otsutsuki sage gave me this power. So I'm guessing he had a reason to give me a different Rinnegan. And the dimension that I entered was specific only to my Rinnegan. Naruto and Sakura were trying to make sense of what Sasuke was trying to say. It felt like jumping from one branch to another rather walking on a road. But Kakashi was clever enough to put the pieces together. There was a look of disbelief mixed with fear on his face when the realization struck him. You mean, the Sage of Six Paths deliberately left back the scroll for you to find? Kakashi asked. The straight face from Sasuke was enough for him to understand what it meant. But why would he do something like that? I mean, why give us the scroll? Sakura asked. The same question was running in Naruto's mind. It made no sense according to him. Though it wasn't like they wouldn't accept a scroll containing lots of jutsus created by Sage of Six Paths, he knew better than to expect something so important with no consequences. Remember how he helped me and Naruto when all seemed lost in the war? It was like he predicted the situation would arrive where he had to step in. This might just be his next step. Sakura audibly gasped when she heard Sasuke's words. She couldn't help but imagine the worst possible situation. Kakashi too was thinking along similar lines. The room was eerily quiet for a few seconds before Naruto stepped in. Let me get this straight. You, he said, pointing toward Sasuke, entered a new dimension which you think is accessible only for you and found a scroll possibly belonging to Super Grand Sage, lying there, waiting for you to pick up. And you think it's all part of a grand scheme that's about to happen which might be a huge headache. Is that what you are saying? He asked louder than required. Sasuke just nodded in response. Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I believe you. If there's someone who can possibly do this, it's only him. The blonde said exasperatedly, pinching the nose of his bridge. Then what do you suggest we do now, Lord Hokage? Sakura asked with her game face on. Frankly, I have no idea, Sakura. We don't know who our foe is. We don't even know if there is a foe for sure. And please drop the Lord, Sakura. You can refer to me like before. Kakashi said the last rather sheepishly. But what if there is a foe? Someone like Kagaya or even more powerful. What are we supposed to do then? We can't go unprepared against an enemy like that. Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi were surprised to hear Naruto talk so sensibly. Having been around him for quite some time, they all knew that the Uzumaki wasn't one for thinking. He always charged into a battle without any plan whatsoever and luckily managed to survive it. Sasuke was the first one to come out of his stupor. I'll have to agree with Dope on this one. I'll try and find out more about this. You guys inspect the scroll. He said. But Sasuke, you just came back. You can't just leave us. Sakura was cut off before she could finish what she was saying. Sakura, this is not the time for such discussions. This world might very well be facing a danger even greater than Madara or Kagaya. But I made a promise to you, and I intend to keep it. Just, not now. Sasuke said, looking straight into the bright emerald eyes of Sakura. Sakura on her part remembered how Sasuke touched her forehead with his fingers before leaving the village. She would never forget that memory. She believed in him. And so, she just nodded with a hint of a smile. So, where's the scroll you talked about? Naruto asked. Sasuke put his hand inside his poncho and reached for a small scroll which about 6 inches and placed it on the desk before him. This is the scroll Super Grand Sage wrote. The blonde questioned incredulously. He wasn't expecting a tiny scroll like that. Sasuke threw him an annoyed look before he continued to do his part. He opened the scroll and made a hand sign to retrieve the contents of the scroll. In a puff of smoke, a large scroll which was the size of the summoning contract scroll appeared. The scroll was white in color with black Magatama design on its edges. Naruto couldn't help but marvel looking at the scroll. It was so exquisite looking that just the mere presence of it emitted a godly aura. Sakura and Kakashi were in similar states. Their eyes shone with admiration for the scroll. They couldn't help but agree that the Otsutsuki had style. I'd suggest someone with good knowledge in seals take a look at it. As much as I hate to admit it, my knowledge in sealing art is very limited. Sasuke said a bit hesitantly. He never liked being ignorant of something. You're looking right at him, pal. Naruto replied with a cocky grin. Sasuke stared at the blonde for a moment before facing his former sensei. He gave a questioning look with one eyebrow raised. Kakashi just nodded his head slightly in response. Yes. Naruto is the most knowledgeable person about seals in our village now. He's as good as Master Jiraiya in some areas of the art. Kakashi replied. Sasuke was surprised to hear this new information but did well to hide it. He turned back towards the blonde before he spoke up. And when did you learn Fuin Jutsu? And how come you're good at it within such short time? He asked, genuinely curious. I started learning it right after you left the village. I knew you would train while traveling and I decided not to fall back either. With a little help from Dad's and Pervy Sage's old works and shadow clones, I mastered it no time. He said while brushing his nose with his finger trying to prove it was an easy task. But the fact was that the knowledge Hagoromo gave him helped him in understanding the delicate art. He was making good leaps in medical ninjutsu too. Oh, stop acting so smug, Naruto. I lost count how many times you ended up in the hospital while you blew yourself up working on seals. Sakura teased her blonde friend. Naruto was visibly dejected by Sakura's actions. Oh, come on, Sakura. Give me a break, will ya? He drawled. Like I expected. You haven't changed at all, dope. Kakashi, who was watching as his 3 former students bicker among themselves, smiled under his mask. It's just like during their genin days, he mused. Oh, how he wished he could go back to those days. Being a jonin instructor was better than being Hokage for him. Handling 3 little brats was easier than the ton of paperwork he had to deal with. He continued watching the 3 in front of him with a fond smile. The sheepish grin of Naruto, the faint smile on Sasuke, the heartful laugh of Sakura, he wished it would stay like that forever. Even though he knew better, he just hoped that things always didn't turn worse. He already lost one team during his early days. He just wished that this team, no, this family don't end up the same. Time skip. 3 months later. He could feel the heat of burning flames wash over his face, despite the fact that it was raining heavily. But the flames didn't seem to die down anytime soon. Not until they've destroyed whatever lay in their path. The smell of blood mixed with dirt hung heavily in the air. The smell he was so familiar with. But unlike in the past, he couldn't help but feel a bit revolted by it. It was the blood of his comrades after all. He kept watching as his village burned into nothingness. The very village he swore to protect it from the shadows. The very village he previously sought to destroy, just like it was being done now. He felt ashamed of himself for thinking like that in the past, though it wasn't the best of the moments for self-retrospection. The Hokage monument, which usually provided the best view of the village, was now providing him with the sight he never even wanted to think of. He knew the buildings didn't matter because the people are what make up a village. As long as they are safe, they can always build the village anew. Although the villagers are evacuated and shifted to a more secure location, he knew it would be just a matter of time before the assailant finds them and erase their existence. It was immensely frustrating for him that he couldn't do anything to stop it. It was the first time in the past 4 years that he felt like he was clearly outclassed. The last time he felt the same way, he was facing his brother in a corridor of a small inn 8 years ago. There was only one way to protect this village. And right now, that way was on its way here. Normally, he would never have trusted his friend with such an important task. Many things could go wrong, and his friend was known for screwing things up. But he knew there was no one better than him when something threatened the safety of his village. He experienced it firsthand. He became alert when he sensed a presence rapidly approaching but stopped worrying when he recognized who it was. In an orange flash, his friend appeared before him. Covered in golden chakra flames from head to toe, indicating he was in tailed beast chakra mode, he approached the last surviving Uchiha with a huge scroll behind his back. "Everything ready?" Sasuke asked, though he knew the answer already. "Yeah," replied Naruto with all seriousness as he returned to his normal form. "Where are the others?" "On their way. They should be here." As he was saying, 4 figures appeared behind him. Now. He finished turning to face the newcomers, and as if to prove his point. 3 of the 4 figures, namely Sakura, Hinata and Shikamaru, walked up to Naruto and Sasuke, while Kakashi Haddock, the 6th and the worst Hokage according to himself, made 6 shadow clones. Sakura stood in front of Sasuke while Hinata stood before Naruto. Sakura was staring into Sasuke's eyes with tears in her own. She was searching for the one thing she always wanted to see in those onyx eyes. She hoped, at least at the final moments, she could find it. And she did. But it was mixed with something else. What is fear? No. It was remorse. Remorse that he didn't show his love for her sooner. She brought herself up and caressed the cheek of Sasuke, which brought out a surprised look from the Uchiha. She smiled despite the circumstances they were in. "Don't worry, Sasuke. I believe in you and Naruto. You'll fix this, and I'm sure of it. Then, we'll have plenty of time for ourselves. It's never too late for anything." Sasuke's regret just grew more. Here she was, a woman who loved him unconditionally for as long as he could remember. And it took him and his pride the idea of losing her forever to convey his feelings towards her. It felt ironic for him because the reason he chose to stay away from her all this time was the fear of losing her. He couldn't bear it after everything he had already lost. He shut his eyes to prevent anyone from seeing his tears. Crying was a sign of weakness, and he needed to be strong now. Especially since the hope of this whole world was on him once again. Hinata held Naruto's hand tightly as if she was afraid of losing him. She wasn't worried one bit about the fact that she was going to die soon. Trivial things like her death didn't matter to her. But being apart from Naruto scared her to no end. After all those years of running behind Naruto, trying to catch up to him and wishing to stay by his side, she finally achieved it, and before she could enjoy the blonde's presence in her life to the fullest, she was about to be separated from him. Naruto looked at Hinata, and a small smile graced his lips. All his life, he strived to get better so people would notice him. He made it his goal to surpass even the Hokage so that people would acknowledge him. And that he did. He earned the respect of everyone in all the nations as the hero who saved the world. But little did he know that he had been acknowledged by her before everyone else. It took him 19 years to realize that she was the first one to see him for himself and believed in him. That she was everything he ever wished for in his life. It both amazes and embarrasses him thinking how dense he was. "Don't worry, Hinata," he said, placing his hand on her shoulder reassuringly. "Everything will be alright. We'll make sure of it." With a wide grin. Every lurking fear she had until now started to disappear slowly. The warmth in his words and the conviction with which he said erased any doubt she had in her heart. "Promise me, Naruto. Promise that you'll come back to me. To us." She almost choked at the last part. Emotions were flooding her heart. She cursed her luck, which seemed hell-bent on preventing her from enjoying happiness. "I will return, Hinata. For the sake of our future, I will. I promise," he said, leaning closer to her to place a kiss on the forehead. She smiled, knowing that once Naruto made a promise, rest assured he will live up to it, no matter what, because that's his ninja way. And hers too. Shikamaru just kept waiting for Naruto and Sasuke to have their moment. He wasn't going to interfere even though rationality called for it. He, for one, didn't even have the chance to have his moment with the woman he loved. She was in Suna with her brothers when fate decided to deliver another fatal blow to his heart. Just when it looked he got over his father's death and found someone to fill that void, he lost them again. And he was absolutely powerless to prevent that in both the cases. Fate can be cruel like that sometimes. And he would be damned if he even thought about robbing these two of what he missed. Kakashi approached Naruto and Sasuke when they finished saying their final words. One glanced towards determined eyes, and he knew they were ready for their final stand against the wanton destruction of human life. With a glance and a small nod, he motioned for Sakura and Hinata to stand behind him. Shikamaru took the reins from Kakashi. "Alright guys. You know the plan, right? So I won't bother explaining it again." Stick to it and you shouldn't have a problem. And remember, keep your contact with others to a minimum. Don't engage with them unless absolutely necessary. And most importantly, don't fail. The last of the Uzumaki and the Uchiha clan just nodded in agreement. All the best you two. Remember that the hopes of this whole world now rests on your shoulders. It's a heavy burden, but I know you two are capable of bearing it. Only you two. Kakashi said with a smile. Not his usual eye smile but a real smile. His mask was torn and his face was on display to the others for the first time. 6 Crimson Ray formation. The clones of the Hokage yelled, which were positioned in a perfect hexagonal, formed a barrier around Naruto and Sasuke, glowing scarlet red in the starlit sky. Naruto, begin. Sasuke said as it was time. Naruto in response started going through hand signs with an incredible speed and precision. Only Sasuke with his Sharingan was able to follow the signs, which ended with clapped hands. A huge circular seal formed beneath their feet with 6 lines extending to each corner of the barrier from the seal. Hinata, Sakura, Kakashi and Shikamaru watched from the other side of the barrier as the two inside started to push their chakra carefully into the seal. The black seal started to glow with a purple aura in response to the chakra input. A distortion appeared behind where the others were standing as the seal started to glow more brightly. A person came out from the distortion levitating. The person had pale skin and pale blue hair which he kept in a long ponytail. His hair was parted down the middle in a zigzag pattern and his head was adorned with a pair of flat curved horns which resembled bull's horns. He had sharp and stern facial features and his eyebrows were cut very short as a symbol of nobility. He dressed in traditional nobleman's attire consisting of a white Karajinu hunting robe, baggy pants, a pair of Tengu Jetta, and also wore a transparent veil over his head. With a proud smirk adorning his lips, he made his presence known. Well, would you look at this? The humans are attempting something new again. A pity that it won't have any effect on the current situation, no matter how much effort you put into it. He spoke. His voice was delicate, yet it carried a wave of authority and pride. The 4 standing outside turned around immediately at hearing those words. Sakura and Kakashi took point as Shikamaru was ready to provide support to them. Hinata charged her twin lion fist and was ready to attack, while Kakashi's hand was enveloped in purple lightning. They were all on high alert as their enemy stared at them with a rather boring expression. You really think you can stop me with those pathetic excuses? He drawled and struck a thinking pose. I keep forgetting that word. What was it again? He flicked his fingers like he remembered. Jutsu. What a pathetic name. Mama Shiki was right indeed. You humans really are a filthy race. He seethed. Say the one who's responsible for all the destruction he caused with no regard to others' life. Kakashi shot back, his words dripping with rage. He needed to buy Naruto and Sasuke as much time as he could so they could complete the jutsu. If their enemy was willing to indulge in a talk, then he wasn't going to mind that. HMPH. You humans are such hypocrites. What do you do when a parasite starts sucking away your blood? You kill it, don't you? Do you have any regard for its life? His smirk widened when he received nothing in response. You humans have lived off on our chakra generated by the divine tree. I'm just taking back what was rightfully ours in the first place. That's all. So we are nothing but parasites to you, huh? It was Sakura this time, only her anger wasn't as controlled as Kakashi's. I couldn't care less about what you are to me. Your whole existence amount to nothing. But there lies the problem. You see, we are not like parasites. You are the parasite that came to our world and started to slaughter us. Shikamaru retorted. That last comment struck a nerve with the Otsutsuki. His calm demeanor vanished along with the smug smile he always seemed to have. He frowned with disgust towards the 4 standing in front of him. He slowly landed on the ground and glared ahead with rage in his eyes. His Byakugan activated, he looked ready to kill them all with a single strike. How dare you lowly creatures insult me? I will obliterate your existence off his planet for that. The moment he finished his words, he appeared before Kakashi and Sakura. They were sent flying away by the force he generated when he rushed towards them. Air started to fill into the vacuum that was created as a result of his movement. Such was his speed. Shikamaru moved his shadow to grab hold of the enemy before it stopped midway. He collapsed to the ground with his eyes wide when he fell prey to the genjutsu of the Rin Sharingan his opponent possessed. Finally, Byakugan met Byakugan when he came face to face with Hinata. He raised his eyebrow in surprise. Byakugan. You are different from the humans then. A Byakugan is a sign of nobility, though it might have been dirtied by human blood. Maybe I won't kill you then. I'll keep you alive. As my slave, that is. He laughed maniacally. Naruto and Sasuke just watched this exchange from the inside as they couldn't move since it would disturb the seal. They needed to focus if they hoped to prevent the world from complete annihilation. But they were slowly losing their composure. Seeing their loved ones beat down by him stirred up immense hatred from inside. Hinata lunged forward, swinging her hands at her fellow Byakugan possessor. She swept her legs to get him off balance, but he simply jumped up. Hinata looked up but simply smiled. By the time he realized why she was smiling, it was a little too late as a clone of Hinata flew past the face of the Otsutsuki. A small cut appeared on his left cheek as a result. Hinata's smile turned into a frown when her attack wasn't able to do what she hoped for. He closed his eyes and smiled as the cut healed itself in no time. I must applaud you, for you are the only one who was able to inflict a wound upon me. A feat not even your so-called heroes were able to achieve. But I won't insult your efforts by saying it was luck, though it is the truth. Hinata stood in front of him unfazed by his words. Her resolve was strong and clear. She needed to buy a little more time for the both. The process was almost over. He opened his eyes and raised his hand, his palm facing Hinata. But it's time to end this. He stated impassively as a grey rod emerged from his palm. It flew and pierced Hinata in her stomach in less than a blink of an eye. Her eyes widened in shock as the adrenaline pump slowed down. She coughed up blood as she fell to her knees. The area around the rod started to turn into ash. Hinata. Naruto cried in anguish as he watched his wife die in front of his eyes. His mind went blank. Nothing except the image of Hinata was present in his mind now. The chaos, the fire, the barrier, the seal, the shouts of Sasuke, nothing. Red chakra started to envelop him as he unconsciously called upon Kurama's chakra. The chakra was immediately being sucked into the seal, but it was replenished before it can completely disappear. The seal began to flash brightly, and before anyone knew it, Naruto and Sasuke were being sucked into a vortex. The last thing Naruto saw before being completely warped was the ash statue of Hinata crumble and disperse into the air. And then, everything went dark for the heroes of the Fourth Great Ninja War. A stream of purple lighting hit the Otsutsuki, effectively tattering his veil and Karajinu. He rolled his eyes in annoyance as he turned around to face Kakashi, who was panting hard. It looked like the sixth Hokage put everything he had into his jutsu, but it was all for naught. In release, huh? Impressive. But nowhere near to be called effective. Why do I even bother explaining it to? He said, pinching the bridge of his nose. Kakashi smiled at that. Maybe this wasn't effective. But what Naruto and Sasuke are going to do is definitely effective. He said while trying to catch his breath. The Otsutsuki just sighed. As much as he liked to toy with people and see the look of hopelessness and despair in their eyes before being done with them, he was losing his patience now. He just turned around and levitated into the air. He raised his arm and started to gather chakra in his palm. The red and purple massive chakra started out the size of a tennis ball and expanded into a massive orb. Nothing can stop me. Not even time travel. He said before directing the huge destructive chakra orb towards the land. Kakashi's eyes widened when he heard what his enemy said, he knows. And he deliberatively let them go back. But how? Does this mean this really is the end? He thought before a bright light blinded him. He woke up to find himself lying on his back in a wide empty space. There nothing except everlasting white space in all directions. He suddenly shut his eyes and held his head with his hand as it started to burn fiercely. It felt like his skull was getting crushed by a mountain. He slowly reopened his eyes when the burning pain subsided. He immediately found Naruto standing a few meters away from him. He got up and walked towards his fellow time traveler. "Naruto, where are we?" he inquired while he himself started to look around to make sense of where they were. When he received no response, he walked up to the blonde and put his hand on his friend's shoulder. He slowly turned him around to see tears flowing freely from the cerulean eyes. There was no sound or sniffles. Just plain tears. But the most depressing thing was his eyes had no life in them. The usual flair, determination and warmth the blue orbs carried were no more present. He could understand why that was. Seeing one's loved ones die right in front of your eyes while you stood there helpless can shatter their heart. He of all people knew it better than anyone else. That changed him to someone whom even he barely realized. Soaked in despair and turning that into hatred, he lost himself. No, he had forsaken himself. But he wasn't going to let that happen with the blonde. Everything was riding on both of them, and he can't afford something like that happening right now. Naruto. Get a hold of yourself. We need to find out what this place is and get out of here. It took a few seconds before he got a reply. For what purpose? Naruto asked barely above a whisper. Sasuke was stunned to hear Naruto say that his voice. It's so helpless, he thought. His fears started to come true. It was just like what happened to him. But he wasn't letting Naruto take the wrong path now. Naruto saved him from the darkness. And it was time to return the favor. If he can't prevent Naruto from wallowing in despair, then he'll at least make sure that the blonde doesn't lose himself. So you forgot all the sacrifices everyone made back there? Everyone who had all their hopes and dreams pinned on us? Sasuke asked as he stared into the infinite space mimicking Naruto. Naruto just stayed silent. He didn't have a response to that. He was torn between retorting back with "of course not and it doesn't matter" in the end. He didn't know why he was even thinking like this. He knew that giving up hope when everyone trusted him was wrong, but somewhere deep inside his broken heart, it didn't feel wrong. "Did you? Little Naruto?" came a voice from behind. Both of them immediately turned back with their guard up. But their guard unconsciously dropped when they realized who it was. "Super Gramp Sage," Naruto drawled, shocked by the sage's presence. "What are you doing here, Hagoromo?" Sasuke asked suspiciously with narrowed eyes. He knew all this was somehow related to the progenitor of the ninja creed. "I should be one asking that question, dear Sasuke. After all, this is where I live. Not your little Naruto," the sage of the sixth path said with a soft smile. "What do you mean you live here? You're dead," the Uchiha growled. He needed answers, but all he was getting was more questions. "Exactly. This is the spirit world." That reply widened both the newcomers' eyes. "Does that mean we are dead?" It was Naruto's turn to ask now. But he had no anxiety or fear while asking that. Something that didn't go missing by both Sasuke and Hagoromo. Normally, Naruto would have wreaked havoc by now if a bomb like that was dropped. "Not exactly. At least not yet. But you very well might. Give us the straight answer. I know you have all the answers to our questions. So stop wasting our time." Sasuke was verge on attacking Hagoromo himself. He didn't know what happened exactly, but ending up in the spirit world that was not in their plan. Hagoromo chuckled in his mind. "Indra is always the impatient one," he thought. "This is a limbo. Your presence here means that you are on the verge of death. Unless you die or be saved, you can't leave this place. This is a transition void between the real world and the afterlife," Hagoromo explained. Both of them processed the new information rather calmly. "But I don't know what caused for you two to end up here," Hagoromo said as this was their cue to explain what they knew. "I doubt that. But I will tell you anyway. No point in arguing with a dead man's spirit." Sasuke's words earned him a chuckle from the old Sage's changed a little after all. Must be Naruto's effect. But he looked at Naruto who still had downcast look on his face. He's changed too. Something horrible must have taken place to break his spirit, he thought. A few days ago, a group of 4 started to attack all the 5 nations and collect the tailed beasts. Their purpose was to revive that damn tree. They were at Satsuki's just like you and your mother. But one of them was strong. Stronger than Kagaya. His name was Kagen Shikiatsutsuki. Hagoromo had a grim look on his face when Sasuke finished his explanation. It was his turn to calmly process the information the latest reincarnation of his elder son gave him. This is indeed bad. So the people that mother mentioned that day did come. To think there exists someone stronger than mother is a truly frightening revelation. He took a deep breath before speaking. He needed to choose his words carefully now. Even the slightest misstep would mean the end of the world. He needed to warn the two in front of them the extent of their enemy's strength, but also be careful not to break their spirit. Naruto's condition made him warier than usual. He was unusually quiet the entire time Sasuke explained the past events. "So you two finally were able to finish that seal. And you intend to change the past and prevent them from coming to the earth itself. Is that it?" he asked. Sasuke just nodded as affirmatively. "Come here you both. There is something I want to do to help your cause. It seems like you two are the ones to correct the mistakes I and mother did. For that, you have my gratitude." The staff in his hand levitated and started to float beside the sage. Naruto and Sasuke both exchanged looks and did as told. They stepped forward to face the sage directly. "It seems like your dominant arm has been mutilated, dear Sasuke." He said it like he just noticed it. Sasuke looked irked at that comment. The smile that graced Hagoromo's lips irked him further. "This will hurt a little." He said. He placed his palm on Sasuke's forehead and closed his eyes. The stump of Sasuke's missing hand started to burn. Both Sasuke's and Naruto's eyes widened as his missing arm started to regenerate with incredible speed. His hand was completely reformed in a matter of seconds, but Sasuke fell to his knees when it was over. Naruto caught Sasuke before he hit the ground completely. "Sasuke? You alright?" The concern in his voice made Sasuke feel a bit better. He didn't turn into a cold-hearted loser after all, he thought. He just nodded towards Naruto saying he was alright. "Super Gramps. How did you do that? You can wield chakra even after you're dead." "I didn't use my chakra back there, little Naruto. I just used his own chakra to regenerate the arm. Hence the exhaustion," Hagoromo explained. "Now, both of you give me your dominant arms. This is the last thing I can do to help you both." Sasuke got up and both did as told. They both put forward their dominant arm for the sage. Hagoromo made an all too familiar gesture by connecting his palms to their dominant hand palms, just like he did the last time. But the feeling Naruto and Sasuke got were different from before. When Hagoromo retracted his hands, they both looked at their palms, hoping to find a seal. But to their surprise, their palms were empty. No sign of any seal. They looked up to the sage for answers. The last time, I gave you the yin and yang seals to seal away mother. But there's no need for that now according to your plans. Both of them nodded, understanding Hagoromo's reasoning. And I helped you awaken Indra's and Ashura's chakra and their abilities to its full potential present inside of you last time. But this time, I just distributed both of your chakras between you two. It will take some time to get adjusted to it, but your powers will amplify once it's done. Sasuke quickly connected the dots inside his head and felt startled for a second. Does that mean Naruto will be able to awaken Rinnegan and I can use the six-path sage jutsu? Sasuke questioned. Naruto was shocked to hear what the sage intended to do. Hagoromo just couldn't control his laughter at that question. I thought you were the smart one among you two, Sasuke. That garnered two stern glares from the two in front of him. To answer your question, no. Naruto doesn't awaken the Rinnegan. He doesn't have the eyes to do that. And you can't utilize six-path sage jutsu because your body won't support it. Then what did you? Naruto stopped mid-sentence as he felt a little odd. Sasuke turned to look at what made the blonde stop talking. He frowned when he saw what was happening to his friend. Naruto's body, rather his spirit, started to glow brightly and soon he started to disintegrate. Naruto just stared down at his body which was slowly falling apart with wide and worried eyes. Why did you do to us? Sasuke demanded Hagoromo with narrowed eyes. It's none of my doings, dear Sasuke. Looks like little Naruto's time is up. You mean he going to die? Alarm started to ring inside the Uchiha's mind. He can't die. If he dies, then it's impossible to achieve our goals. Better he's coming back to life. I can't say for sure. Damn it. Naruto. Sasuke shouted, trying to get hold of Naruto's disappearing form. But he just passed right through him and fell down. When he rose back to his feet and turned around, there was no presence of his partner. Okay. Remain calm. We're not sure if he's dead yet. There is a chance he's alive like Hagoromo just said. So what about me then? He thought, trying to analyze his situation. He was in a sticky situation and he needed to get out of it no matter what. Sasuke. Hagoromo's serious tone brought him out of his stupor. Don't worry. He's alive. I can sense him in the real world. And you two will join him soon. So here are my last words to you. Sasuke gave his full attention to the sage now. He knew the sage's words can be trusted from his past experience. So he was ready to receive as much information as he could. I managed to fix your arm. But I can't fix broken hearts. And little Naruto seems to suffer because of it. It's up to you to help him heal those wounds. You are more like Indra than the other reincarnates before you. And Naruto is almost the same as Ashura. Indra once dearly loved his little brother before they grew apart. Whenever I watched their reincarnations face each other, I hoped they could become like how Indra and Ashura were like before. But my hopes failed every time. But I'm sure you two won't fail my hopes this time. So I'm trusting you to take care of Naruto. Sasuke was surprised to hear that Indra and Ashura were once very much him and Itachi. But his surprise faded and regret took its place when he thought about Itachi. He still couldn't forgive himself for what he did even though he wasn't exactly at fault for that. He blamed himself for acting without knowing the complete truth. I won't let things happen like they did last time, he thought. His resolve hardened and his eyes were proof of it. Hagoromo, who saw this, smiled softly. He was sure that his hopes wouldn't drown this time. And before Sasuke realized, his spirit too left the limbo and returned back to his body. Good luck you two. Hagoromo said to no one as he too vanished from the plane with a satisfied smile. His eyes barely opened to the blurry image of a woman in hospital grubs with her blonde hair tied in a ponytail, trying to bring him back to life using her medical ninjutsu. But his body felt like it was stung by lightning. But medical ninjutsu shouldn't hurt. It was supposed to do the exact opposite of that. He could see the green glow emitting from her hands, but still, he couldn't let go of feeling it had. And before he could come to a solution he felt it again. Only this time, the feeling was much stronger. It felt like he was tased in the neck. He sat upright on his bed, trying to regain his breathing. He felt like the wind was knocked out of him for a second there. He took a few deep breaths and slowly started to bring it down to normal before he lied back on his bed. His vision started to get clearer and soon he was able to see clearly. Where am I? He barely managed to get those words out before passing out in exhaustion. His world went dark again, only this time, he wasn't dying. He woke up from his sleep a few hours later to be greeted by the image of three people around on his bed. A blonde woman in her mid-20s with brown eyes on his left, a white-haired man around the same age in standard Jonin uniform, and a rather small old man in what appeared to be Hokage robes. It took a few seconds for him to process that completely before realizing that the blonde woman was none other than Tsunade and the old man was Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. He didn't recognize the third person though. His brain went haywire the next second. His head hurt with all the questions that started to pop up in his mind. Why is the third Hokage still alive? And why does Tsunade look a little different? And is that Kakashi-sensei without his mask? Why am I in the hospital? Is this some kind of genjutsu? Why can't I move my body? Damn it, and none of these thoughts helped him in any way. How are you feeling? Tsunade asked with a medical clipboard in her hands. Granny? Where am I? How is the old man still alive? He barely managed to ask her. He felt like he was completely drained off his chakra. He never felt this weak before. But he wasn't worried about that right now. He was in a situation he'd never imagined even in his wildest dreams. He knew Tsunade could help him with that. She was someone he could trust his life without a second thought. But her response was something he should have seen coming. "Who the hell are you calling Granny, you fool? I'm gonna rip you apart for that." Tsunade yelled loud enough for the entire floor to hear. She was about to hit Naruto with a clipboard before Sarutobi decided to stop her. "Tsunade. Enough. He's a patient of yours. Do well to remember that," he warned her. Tsunade tch''d in response and began her inspection, rather begrudgingly. "Alright. Just say yes or no to the following questions." She spoke with narrowed eyes towards her blonde patient. "Can you hear properly?" She got an approving nod in response. She just ticked in a box in her clipboard. The same thing repeated for the next few questions. She inquired about his basic functions such as eyesight, breathing, etc. "He looks fine. He just needs time to recover from his injuries. I'd say a few weeks at the most," she told the Hokage. "Now that my job here is done, I'm leaving him to you, Tsukumo. He's all yours now," she said, turning towards the silver-haired man. The now identified Tsukumo nodded his head with a small smile. The air in the room began to turn heavy the moment Tsunade left. Naruto noticed the tense looks on Hirazen's and the white-haired man's faces. He didn't know why, but he didn't have a good feeling about what was about to happen. If their plan succeeded, they should have ended up somewhere around the time of the Fourth Great Ninja War. His thought process was cut off when he heard Hirazen cleared his throat, possibly to gain his attention. "We have a few questions for you. But I can understand if you want to rest for a while before we get on that." Hirazen said the last part a bit reluctantly, though his concern sounded genuine. Naruto found this as a chance to get some answers. "I would like to rest for a while. I don't think I have much energy in me right now," he said weakly, facing the wall. And that wasn't a lie either. He really did feel like that. "It's alright. We'll be back to see you tomorrow morning then. I wish you a speedy recovery. I'll leave one of Anbu guards and Tsukumo outside your room. In case you need any help." Naruto knew that was a lie. They were placed to keep an eye on him. Soon, the Hokage and Tsukumo proceeded to walk out of the room. "So I'm already being watched, huh? This is not good. I need to talk to Kurama about this," and with that thought, he closed his eyes and entered his mind space. He was standing in the all-too-familiar sewer with its giant inhabitant sleeping with its head on the legs. "Boy, Kurama. What happened back there?" he immediately questioned his longtime companion. The fox just opened one eye to look at Naruto before closing it back. "You screwed up is what happened," he grunted with closed eyes. "What do you mean I screwed up?" Naruto shot back. "Exactly what I said, brat." The fox growled with a hint of irritation. "Hey. Just give me a straight answer. Okay." Naruto almost yelled in frustration. He couldn't understand what was going on around, and now, the only one he thought could shed some light was trying to avoid him. It was all just adding up to his pent-up rage. "You want straight answers? Here it is then. We ended up somewhere we shouldn't have. We possibly traveled further into the past than we intended to, thanks to you. We are not 3 years back in the past. This is not the time of Fourth Great Ninja War. If my guess is right, I'd say we are around 30 years in the past." That shook the blonde to his core. His eyes widened when he heard what most probably happened. He couldn't believe what he heard. He didn't want to. He wanted to scream back at the tailed beast in front of him for cracking jokes at a time like this, but he knew it wasn't a joke. The irritation in the beast's heavy voice made sure of it. "How?" he questioned, with disbelief written all over his face. Kurama hesitated to tell him for a second, but realized he had to. If they were to make things right, being blunt was the only way. "When your wife died, your emotions hit the peak. The seal that holds me inside you drew out my chakra without you even realizing it. The seal was designed in such a way so that it draws on my power whenever you are feeling strong emotions." Naruto recalled the events when he manifested Kurama's chakra for the first time, the time when I thought Sasuke died while fighting Haku, then the second time when I faced Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, and then the next, when I was thrown into the trench by Pervy Sage, and all the incidents when drew the tailed beast's chakra. Every instance had one thing in common. He was overflowing with strong emotions. Be that sadness, fear of death or hatred. The time travel seal absorbed the chakra that was pulled out from me. And you know how that seal works, right? The amount needs to perfect for us to end up in the right place. Kurama finished. Naruto's disbelief slowly started to fade away. Everything started to make sense now. And he now understood why Kurama said it was his fault. He let the emotions get in the way. He opened his mouth trying to say something, but nothing came out. All the worries he had a few minutes ago vanished. Only one thought raced his mind now. He failed. Again. He lost his wife in the process of trying to save the world, and now, he messed up their only chance. He stared blankly at his reflection below him. So I did mess up. He whispered, and I lost my chance of saving the world. The chance to keep the promise I made to Hinata, he thought. He remembered how she smiled, even on the verge of her death. A soft and satisfied smile with a trail of blood oozing from her mouth down her chin. The pain he felt when he remembered that made him fall to his knees. He let out the tears he kept holding back all this time. All of this, it's my fault. Mine. 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 He cried, repeatedly punching his reflection in the water below. Kurama felt a pang of guilt while looking at his former jailer. He regretted blaming Naruto for the screw-up. He mentally kicked himself for pinning on the fault on the Jinchuriki. Naruto, this is not your fault. The boon that saved your life so many times in the past turned into a bane this time. We just ran out of luck. That's it. No one's to blame here. No. I messed up. If I kept my emotions in control, this wouldn't have happened. The tears that he shed didn't seem to have a limit at this point. Are you even listening to me? Your wife was killed right in front of you. No man could have controlled his emotions when something like that happens. And if you could have controlled your emotions, then you're no man. Kurama roared. He had enough of the blonde self-berating tirade and wanted to put a stop to it. And he achieved it. Naruto stopped punching and looked up to face the giant fox with an anguished look in eyes. Listen to me, Naruto. I've been watching you for 20 years, right from the moment you were born. I know how much you suffered and how you felt about it. I know every struggle you faced and how you overcame them. And I also know that this is just another struggle that you'll have to overcome. So stop whining about the past and focus on the future. You did promise your wife that you'll make this problem go away, remember? Naruto listened to every word Kurama said carefully. He kept quiet for a few seconds before slowly turning around. Promises mean nothing when people are dead, Kurama. They just become empty words. A former shell of themselves. Just like me. And with that, the blonde walked away before disappearing. Kurama just stared at the place where Naruto disappeared. He couldn't get the image of Naruto with his shoulders slumped, head low and completely hopeless walking away from him. Seeing the most optimistic person he'd ever known broken to such extent caused something he never felt before. Fear. Not for his life, but for the future. He was afraid of what the future holds for the blonde. He just hoped that somehow, someone would change Naruto and return him to normal self. Third Hokage, I request a private audience with just you, me and Naruto. Everyone else leaves. Even your most trusted Anbu. I'm sorry, but if you think we would leave our Hokage with you two alone, then you're wrong. We may not know your identities, but you two clearly are no ordinary shinobi. How do you expect we can agree to something like that? I can understand your reasoning. But we bear no ill intentions towards the Hokage or this village. But how can we trust? That's enough, Sakumo. You talk like I'm a little child. I'm the Hokage for a reason, you know. Sarutobi cut off his trusted subordinate with a small chuckle. Stop boasting, old man. Tsunade said, irritated by her sensei's lack of seriousness in the issue. That's not what I meant, Lord Hokage. Sakumo said in an apologetic tone with a bow. Relax, Sakumo. Let's hear out the young man first. With that, Sarutobi faced Sasuke and gave a small nod, a gesture indicating him to continue. Sasuke woke up nearly a couple of hours ago from his slumber. Like Naruto, he too was shocked to see Hiruzen still alive. He didn't understand what had transpired for him to end up in a situation like this. When Tsunade asked how he had 2 arms now where he had only 1 arm when he was found, he just said he always had 2 arms and they must have made a mistake. He chose to lie than to explain the truth and look even more suspicious. When the necessary inspections completed, he requested to talk with Naruto, but his request was immediately denied. When he demanded the reason, he was told that Naruto denied talking to them and even showed signs of hostility, forcing them to place him in the torture and interrogation cell. He expected Naruto to behave differently, but to show hostility against the very people he loved, he didn't believe it. He just concluded that it was a made-up reason to get answers out of Naruto. He knew that though Konoha wasn't as militaristic as other villages, they wouldn't mind taking drastic measures for its safety. Right now, his pile of problems just kept increasing. First, his friend seemed broken. Second, he was in a terrible condition with bandages all over his bodies in an unforeseen situation. And now, his heartbroken friend is in prison and possibly being tortured. He saw only one way to solve this problem. And that ended up with him making a request which was currently being denied. As I said before, I need to talk to you alone, Third Hokage. And I want Naruto to be present too. No one else. He pressed the last part so that his intentions were properly conveyed. Sarutobi closed his eyes and started to think. That was a good sign for Sasuke. The request wasn't flat out rejected. When Sarutobi opened his eyes, Sasuke could see a hint of curiosity in them. Alright. I agree. The Hokage said, shocking both Tsunade and Tsukumo. They both began to protest but were silenced by his raised hand. I'm not done yet. I agree, but there are a few conditions. What are these conditions of yours? Sasuke questioned, narrowed eyes. Something told him he wouldn't like them. First, our meeting will take place in T&I cell where your partner is currently being held. 2. Your chakra will be sealed off before our talk starts. Those are the only terms on which I'll grant you your request. The way Sarutobi said those words spoke volumes about his prowess at being a Hokage. He carried a wave of authority and assurance at the same time. Sasuke took a moment to think this through. He has only one chance and he needs to play this right. I decline. I can't let you seal off our chakras. He finally answered. So you do intend to attack Sensei during that? I knew you couldn't be trusted the moment I saw you. Tsunade didn't hold back her thoughts this time. He looked suspicious to her in more than one ways. And he wasn't a pushover in any way. She doubted if she could take on him and hope to win. You couldn't be any more wrong, Senju. As I said before, I hold no ill intentions towards the Hokage or the village. I don't intend to display any hostility either. He said with a smirk. He was getting under nerves and made the men think deeper about his words. Looks my plan is working, he thought. If so, then why do you object to your chakra being sealed off? You don't need chakra to talk. Tsukumo questioned. His tone was more curious and less demanding than before. The things I want to tell and ask the Hokage are highly confidential. I can't afford to someone else eavesdrop on us. He stated impassively and left the remaining occupants of the room speechless. How are those two related anyway? They thought. Make some sense, will you? What you said is totally unrelated to Tsukumo's question. Tsunade almost yelled. She was losing her patience with every word that left Sasuke's mouth. Naruto is an expert in seals. He'll place a privacy seal around the room our meeting takes place. He explained, still as impassive as ever. He found out that keeping a straight face can help you around cautious people. And Hiruzen was just that. If privacy is the only thing you're concerned, we can do that for you. Konoha has its fair share of seal experts. It was Hiruzen who spoke this time. Sasuke, who saw this coming, smirked again. It was going exactly as he planned. It was now time to play his final card. It's funny how you people expect me to trust you guys when you don't trust me one bit. Trust is a two-way street. Is it not? Of course we don't trust you. You're an enemy ninja who infiltrated our village undetected. It's only because you both were on the verge of death that we found you before anything happened. How can we trust you if everything about your presence in this village sounds shady? Tsunade burst out. She had enough of those clever words and the smug smile. She knew he was trying to play them and get what he wanted with his words. And she wouldn't just stand there and let that happen. If I really was your enemy and destroying the village was my aim, then you should know by now that you can't hope to stop us both. If your reputation is anything to go by, then you already should have a good analysis of our strengths. He replied, facing Tsunade and Tsukumo, irritated by her interference. Isn't that the reason why you're agreeing to talk to us instead of interrogating by force, Hokage? Sasuke continued, only this time, he stared right into Hiruzen's eyes. His intense glare would have been enough to knock out any normal shinobi. But Hiruzen wasn't any normal shinobi. He was the third Hokage of the Konoha, a student of both the first and second Hokages, touted as the second god of shinobi. He stood his ground firmly. Tsunade wanted to laugh at the possibility of a whole village being wiped out just 2 shinobi. As far as she knew, there were only 2 shinobi in the history who could achieve something like that. One was Hashirama Senju, her grandfather, and Madara Uchiha, both of them who were long dead. But the grim look on her sensei's face made her wonder about it. After a long silence, Hiruzen let out a deep sigh from his mouth. Fine. I'll agree to your terms. But his chakra will be sealed off the next moment he places the privacy seal. I will personally make sure to that. And yours even before. If you won't agree to this, then consider your request denied. Hiruzen's more than serious tone made sure that there was no room for any further negotiations. I agree. Sasuke replied instantly without any hesitation. He found no problem with this arrangement. He was getting what he wanted, though it would be a little inconvenient with his chakra network shut down. Rest for a while. I'll send Tsukumo to escort you to our meeting place once all the necessary arrangements are made. If that is all, I'll take my leave now. Okay. Came the short reply. Hiruzen just nodded back, acknowledging the response. He motioned for Tsunade and Tsukumo to follow him as he turned around to leave the room. They followed him promptly without a word, courtesy of the stern look on his face. When he opened the door halfway, he stopped in his tracks and glanced back towards the bed where Sasuke was sitting upright. One more thing. I don't care how strong and capable you both are. The moment I decide that you are a threat to this village, I'll kill you both. Even at the cost of my own life. Do well to remember that. That warning didn't sound like a bluff to Sasuke. He knew the Hokage had every intention to do what he said. He just nodded, conveying he got the message. Tsukumo was a little shocked to hear that. He had never seen the Hokage so serious. Not even on the battlefield in the Second Great Ninja War. He just wondered how strong Sasuke was to push their Hokage to the limit. Tsunade was proud of her sensei. Looks like the old man still got it in him. No wonder grandfather passed the will of fire to him, she thought. But she remembered how grim the old Sarutobi's face was back then. She too wondered how powerful the newcomers were. But she had faith her sensei could deal with them. Stern onyx eyes pierced into somber blue ones. Sasuke was staring into Naruto's eyes as if trying to find something that is lost in the deepest trenches of an ocean. But was he successful in finding it? No. Not even remotely close. The deeper he searched, the darker it kept getting. The faintest glimmer of hope the blonde had in the limbo was now gone. He didn't know the reason, but Naruto started to look more and more like him when he ended up as the lone survivor of the Uchiha massacre. Gloomy, subdued, downcast, dispirited, lifeless. He could go on but found no use in it. Just like his previous attempts to engage the blonde in a conversation. I'm guessing you had something to do with us ending up in the wrong place. Or should I say wrong time? He decided to be blunt this time. Things weren't going as planned, and the last thing he wanted was being ignored by the only person he could trust. Yeah. Came the reply, barely above a whisper. Bested. So how do you plan on getting us out of this mess? No idea. I don't think I even can. I'll just screw up more instead. His look never shifting from the bright shining spot on the steel table in front of him. That won't cut it, dope. You got me into this. Now get me out. We have a world to save. Naruto let out a humorless laugh before returning to stare at the spot. That is precisely why I can't help you. You'd be better off on your own trying to save this world. I'll just get in your way. So he's blaming himself for us ending up in a different timeline than what we wanted. Seems like he knows something about how it happened, he thought. So you won't help me then? Some friend you are. He hoped those words were enough to rile him up. But he was proved wrong. Naruto didn't even spare a glance towards him. The Hokage was right outside the door, his hand on the handle, his foot ready to step inside the moment he was ready. But he was hesitant of his decision. This is only the second time that he ever doubted his judgment. The first time was when he made his first decision as the Hokage. Are you sure it's wise, Lord Hokage? Tsukumo asked, who stood behind Hiruzen. I'm not sure, Tsukumo. But I'm guessing you two noticed his choice of words like I did. He kept saying the village and the Hokage instead of your village and your Hokage, didn't you? Sarutobi questioned back. Indeed. The white-haired Jonin replied. If he belonged to any of other hidden villages, he wouldn't have that choice of words. That made me curious about him. But he could have been trained for this mission especially. And if our assumptions are true, he is capable of destroying the village along with the blonde-haired fellow. We found them in a near-death situation, Tsukumo. It's a miracle that they stayed alive. If they were trained for this purpose, we wouldn't have found them like that. And I'll be blunt about it. They're stronger than I was in my prime. That shook Tsukumo to the core. The very thought of not one but two shinobi who are stronger than the most powerful Kage of all was a radical one. He never would have imagined something like this even in his wildest dreams. And if two people of such caliber ended up in such state, imagine how strong one must be to make them like that. I sense something big is going on out there, Tsukumo. Something ominous. And this is the only way we can hope to protect our village should someone like him or her target us. With that, Hiruzen opened the door and entered the room, leaving a mentally gaping Tsukumo Haddock to himself. Before Sasuke could lash out the ignoring Naruto, the door flung open revealing Hiruzen. Even Naruto glanced towards the Hokage before returning his attention back to the now fading spot. Alright. Place the privacy seal. Hiruzen ordered. Naruto. Sasuke called out. As if it was his cue, Naruto went through a set hand signs. When he was done, the walls of the room glowed a dull orange before returning back to normal. Now I'm gonna seal off your chakra. Hiruzen said. He walked towards the Naruto who took his seat. Sasuke's chakra was sealed off in the hospital itself before he was escorted here. Naruto gave no response to let the Hokage finish applying the seal with ease. When he was done, he walked around the table and took a seat on the opposite side of the table, facing both Naruto and Sasuke. Before you start asking questions, I would like you to hear what we have to say first. I'm sure all your questions will change after that. Sasuke spoke as he saw Hiruzen open his mouth. The monkey summoner just nodded in agreement. My name is Sasuke Uchiha and this is Naruto Uzumaki. We're both from the future. Naruto turned to face Sasuke. He didn't understand what Sasuke was trying to achieve here by telling the truth. He doesn't think they'll believe it, does he? He thought. The future, you say? Sarutobi asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes. I know it sounds a little crazy but… A little. Little would be an understatement. I don't have time to talk about fairy tales, young man. Hiruzen shot back, barely restraining his anger. Does he take me for an idiot? He thought. I would have said the same thing a year ago. But a lot has changed since then. The Hokage let out an exasperated sigh. Look, your chakra is sealed off. So you're not a threat to the village right now. Unless you tell the truth, you won't be seeing sunlight ever again. I'll make sure of that. He said and started to get up and leave. Hokage, if you won't listen to us, the village will burn to the ground. Sasuke said with a slightly raised voice. That stopped the Hokage in his tracks. Is that a threat? Sarutobi asked, turning on his heel with narrowed eyes. Not in the slightest. But it's the truth. Not now. And definitely not by our hands. But it will burn. We are the proof of that. We come from an age where there is a different description to the word strength. An age where people came from other worlds and destroyed nations with a single blow. Sarutobi looked into the eyes of Sasuke to find a hint of deceit. But he found none. But he wasn't convinced in the slightest that what Sasuke was saying is true. He found no reason to believe it. How did you think that I'd even consider believing what you say is true? Honestly, I didn't. I knew you wouldn't believe me. But I have no other way to convince you either. Sasuke confessed. Hiruzen closed his eyes and took a deep breath. What if there is a way to convince me? He asked. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at the question. The Hokage took that as cue to explain himself. The Yamanaka clan members have a jutsu called the Psycho Mind Transmission Technique where the caster can access your memories. He along with me will enter your psyche and go through your memories. If I find what you are saying is true, then I'll believe you. Unless you can enter our minds and access our memories alone, I wouldn't advise that. Those memories will only induce horror and panic. The only reason I'm willing even you to access our memories because we have no other choice. That's not possible. It's a Yamanaka clan secret technique. I'm unable to perform even if I wanted to. Then I refuse. Sasuke stated flatly. I don't understand one thing. What is your problem if someone other than me knows the truth? Sarutobi questioned. He was genuinely curious now. Because no one can stand knowing that everything they hold dear will perish one day. No one can bear the pain of seeing their loved ones die right in front of their eyes. It leaves you scarred and those scars burn until you die. Naruto spoke for the first time. His eyes were shining brightly, the reflection caused by the tears that were on the verge of falling. Sasuke looked at him with empathy, while Sarutobi looked at with pity. The Hokage could understand the pain behind those words. He understood something horrible must have happened to him in the past. If what you both are saying is true, then I thank you for your concern of the people. But as the Hokage, I have to make sure of the village's safety and welfare. Unless you both prove yourselves that you're not a threat and what you say is true, I'm sorry, but I can't help you or trust you. I'm gonna regret doing this, Sasuke thought as he sighed. Forgive me for what I'm about to do, third Hokage. He said. He closed his right eye and opened it a second later, revealing his Chokutama Manjikyu Sharingan. Tsukiyomi. And before Hiruzen could react, the world around him started to change into an inverted grayscale style. He was no more present in the interrogation cell, but an open space with blood-red background. What is happening? Drawled the Hokage, looking around in awe and trepidation. You're now in the world of Tsukiyomi. It's a genjutsu where the caster can alter the perception of time. You wanted to see my memories. This is the only that I can show them to you. Hiruzen recognized it was Sasuke's voice. But he heard it all over the place and not from one point. A genjutsu. But how? His chakra was sealed off, he thought. Before he could think any further, the world around him started to change once again. With that, Sarutobi's journey into Sasuke's memories started. It started with Chunin exams, followed by the Sound and Akatsuki's invasion, his fight with Naruto at the Valley of End for the first time, his training under Orochimaru and then killing him, his fight with Itachi, how he learned the truth about Uchiha massacre, how he attacked the 5-cage summit, how he killed Danzo, gaining the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. His fight against Kabuto with reanimated Itachi, his meeting with the reanimated Hokages, him fighting the Ten Tails, Obito and Madara alongside Naruto, Sakura and Kakashi, his meeting with the Sage of Six Paths, facing Kagaya and sealing her way, fighting Naruto at the Valley of the End again, losing his arm, and finally becoming friends with Naruto, how he found the scroll left by Hagoromo. Hagen Shiki Otsutsuki's attack on the village and how they literally ended in the past. Hiruzen didn't just watch these memories. He felt them. He experienced them. He could feel and understand the emotions that Sasuke felt in these memories. He could hear Sasuke's thoughts. He didn't understand how this was possible, but somehow, it was. When those memories stopped playing, the world around him returned back to inverted grayscale with red backdrop before he came out of the genjutsu. He immediately fell to knees but was caught by Sasuke before he touched the ground. He soon passed out from the mental exhaustion. "Naruto. Come here and heal him." Sasuke almost ordered the blonde. Naruto lazily stood up from his chair and walked over towards where Sasuke and Hiruzen were. His pushed Kurama's chakra into the chakra suppression seal, effectively overloading it and disabling. Naruto put a hand on the Hokage's forehead before his palm has started to glow a bright green. He moved his palm around the victim's forehead for a while before retracting them. He laid his palms on the Hiruzen's back and recovered his lost chakra. "He should be fine in a few moments," Naruto said as he finished up healing Hiruzen. "Your chakra was different from Sakura's. It was brighter than usual," Sasuke said while carrying the Hokage and placing him on his chair. "When chakra is blue in color, it indicates that it is the raw form of chakra. Chakra starts to turn greener as it gets refined," Naruto replied. "So you mean to say that you're better than Tsunade and Sakura in medical ninjutsu?" "No. I don't have as much knowledge as they do. But I can perform things I know more effectively." "And you say you'll be a burden rather than a help. I see you're not that effective with lies." Sasuke took a jab, hoping he could get something out of the blonde. But before the blonde could react, Hiruzen groaned and started to open his eyes. "What happened?" He groaned while trying to adjust his eyes to the light. "Sorry I had to do that. But I had no other choice to make you believe us," Sasuke said, rather unapologetically. It took a while for Hiruzen to regain his composure, but he eventually came back to usual self within no time. He, in fact, felt better than he ever did. That was pretty weird considered he just fell prey to a jinjutsu and spent almost 3 days going through someone else's memories. Then it struck him. "How come no one came inside and released me from the jinjutsu?" he asked. His mind started racing through the worst possible scenarios. "Because you barely spent a second in the jinjutsu," Sasuke replied. "A second?" Hiruzen said with a shocked look. "Yes. Tsukiyomi is jinjutsu where I control everything in there. I can even alter how time works in there. The time you spent going through all those memories in that world is only a second in the real world," Sasuke explained. "But how? I've never heard of such a complex jinjutsu ever before. Where did you learn that?" "It's my visual prowess," Sasuke said activating his manjikyu. Sarutobi remembered Sasuke possessing the EMS from the memories. "I have one last question," the Hokage said. When he received an approving nod, he continued. "What's the proof that those memories were true? You said you can manipulate everything including time in that jinjutsu world of yours. It shouldn't be a problem for you to create fake memories either." Sarutobi knew what he saw were indeed real memories. No one could fake emotions that well, no matter how exceptional they were at the art of deception. But he had to ask. The fate of the village rested on his decision. He can't afford not to be 100% sure about this. Sasuke sighed. He understood where Hiruzen was coming from and he respected him for that. But he needs to prove that they weren't fake. That really was a tough challenge until something struck him. "I'm assuming you watched how I reanimated you and the other Hokages, breaking the Reaper death seal." "Right." The Hokage just nodded his head. "Do you think anyone can fake something that they absolutely have no idea about? I couldn't possibly know your relationship with the previous Hokages in detail, can I?" Sarutobi caught on to what Sasuke was trying to imply. And needless to say, it was true. Sarutobi could see his reasoning. And now, he had all the evidence he needed to trust the two in front of him. All his lingering doubts now fading away. "So what is it then, Hokage? I've shown everything you asked for. Do you trust us now?" Sasuke asked. He wasn't pleading, but Sarutobi caught onto the desperation within that. Even Naruto, who remained silent all this time, was staring intently towards him, waiting for his reply. Hiruzen closed his eyes and started to think. He kept doing that for a good 5 minutes. He could sense the impatience growing inside the both in front of him. He finally reached his decision and opened his eyes. "I do. I believe what you say is true. You won't be treated as a threat to this village either. As a matter of fact, I'm instating you both as the shinobi of Konoha from this point onwards. Being the Hokage is not an easy job. The welfare and responsibility of the whole village lie on your shoulders. People look up to you as their role model. They aspire to become like you. They come to you with their problems hoping you could make them go away. You need to lead the shinobi of the village from the front. You must be kind as well as authoritative, depending upon the situation. You need to be a diplomat to resolve issues with the other villages, but shouldn't hesitate to use force if push comes to shove either." And he needed to sit behind a desk from dawn till dusk. And Hiruzen Sarutobi was prepared to be and do everything said above when he took charge as the third Hokage of Konohagakure. But not for what he just witnessed in his office. "Let me get this straight. I believe that you two came from the future and offered to help you save the world however you seem fit and you just rejected that," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. The offer he made yesterday evening after their meeting in the T&I cell was being rejected. He couldn't understand the reason behind it. He was trying to help them. He is, isn't he? We appreciate your offer, Hokage. But ending up here wasn't part of our plan. The breeding Uchiha said. In the past. This far in the past. Replied an impatient Naruto. For some reason, he seemed completely restless about their predicament, a complete opposite from yesterday which didn't go unnoticed by the Hokage. Oh. How far is that you actually intended? Hiruzen asked as he released the smoke from the recently lit pipe. At the time when the fourth great ninja war was about to start. Naruto answered with the slightest hint of irritation. Look, we need to go, alright. So stop wasting our time. I'm sorry you feel that way, Naruto. But it's my responsibility as the Hokage. Oh please. You're just using your position get information out of us. Naruto almost said that accusingly, pointing a finger towards the Hokage. Hiruzen just released another puff of smoke inside. Look Naruto. I care about the welfare of the village as much as you do. I'm just asking these questions so that I can help you both in any way I can. I lived long enough to know how the world works. I just assumed my experience would come in handy. That's all. The flat reply made Naruto sigh. He could understand Hiruzen's worry. If someone like himself, who aspired to be Hokage, cared so much about the village, then it's only fair that the actual Hokage have concerns about its future. And Hiruzen was the one who inspired him to become what he is today. He should have expected nothing less from him. He cursed himself internally for lashing out someone who treated him like his own grandson during his childhood. I'm sorry Lord Third. I shouldn't have said such things. The blonde apologized, regretting his previous words. His impatience got the better of him. He thought he would never let his emotions take over him, but here he was doing the very same thing that sent him downhill. Sarutobi let a small chuckle which almost made him choke due to the smoke. It's alright Naruto. So, will you tell me what are your plans at least now? Naruto's whole demeanor changed when that question came out. Gone was the remorseful look on his face. Hiruzen could clearly sense that Naruto was doing his best to control his anger. As you saw in Sasuke's memories, we were attacked by that bastard Kage Shiki out of the blue. He was after the tailed beasts to revive the divine tree. He wanted to turn this world and its people to fodder so that the chakra fruit can be revived. We tried to fight back, but he was simply too much for us. The only aspect in which we were lucky was that we expected something like that would happen. We didn't know what, but we made some preparations as a last resort. The time travel jutsu. It wasn't actually a time travel jutsu to begin with. The original jutsu froze time for a specific period of time, depending on the amount of chakra used. I made some adjustments and created the time travel jutsu from that. Our plan was to travel back to the time when the fourth great ninja war happened and stop it so that Kage Shiki won't attack us in the first place. That was the only way we can stop him. Every word Naruto said was laced with hatred and anger. Hatred towards the Otsutsuki and angry because of how helpless he was. But how does stopping the fourth great ninja war prevents the future invasion? Because Kage Shiki learned about the existence of our world because of it. He said that he sensed the chakra of 10 tails when it was revived during that war and came to take back what was rightfully his. That damned bastard. Naruto punched the wall beside him, trying to let out some of his frustration, successful in forming cracks in it before he continued. So Shikamaru said that if we prevent the resurrection of the 10 tails, he wouldn't even know about our presence. Hiruzen nodded, understanding what they intended to do from the very beginning. He was quite impressed with the plan actually. I must say, this Shikamaru is quite a genius. I'd expect nothing less from one of the Nara. The Hokage beamed with pride. He was a simpleton in that aspect, being happy at others' success. Yeah. He is. Naruto's voice became low at the memory of his most probably dead friend. But he felt it was one more reason why failure is not an option in this mission. So that was our plan. And it's my fault that we ended up here instead of there. He said, his face painted in shame. And now, we need to travel back into the future and make sure that the 10 tails isn't revived. Not necessarily. Sasuke said, who kept quiet for a while. What do you mean by that? The blonde asked calculatingly. He knew something was up when Sasuke looked like how he was now. Calm and collected. The clarity in his mind was practically oozing out of his eyes. We don't need to travel back to the fourth great ninja war to prevent the 10 tails from reviving. We can do that in this timeline too. But how? The cause of the fourth great ninja war was Madara. If we stop him now, there won't be a fourth great ninja war in the first place. Hiruzen listened to what Sasuke was suggesting and found the explanation reasonable. He was once again impressed with intuition Sasuke displayed. The way Sasuke made him accept the meeting they had was the first time. Naruto was trying to piece together what Sasuke said. It took a while, but he was finally able to grasp what the Uchiha had in mind. A smile appeared on his face but disappeared the next instant. Wait, what if Madara is already dead? he asked his friend. If Madara is dead, then we have to stop Obito from joining up with Black Zetsu. But for us to know for sure whether he's dead or not, he must know how far exactly are in the past. And how do you suggest that we do that? Kurama said it's around 30 years, but he's not sure either. Sasuke didn't respond to that and thought for a while in silence before turning to face Hiruzen. If I remember correctly, you called the white-haired man beside you in the hospital Sakumo, isn't it? The Hokage silently nodded. Is his full name Sakumo Haddock? Haddock? Like Kakashi-sensei's last name? Naruto thought. Indeed. But how do you? Hiruzen stopped mid-sentence remembering who Sasuke's Jonin-sensei was from the latter's memories. Your sensei was Sakumo's kid, or as it will be. This whole time travel stuff is confusing, he thought. So is he born yet? Yes. A year ago. Sakumo's wife died during the childbirth, unfortunately. A year, huh? Kakashi-sensei was 34 when we were attacked. So that means. We are 33 years into the past. Sasuke completed Naruto's sentence. And if Kakashi is a year old, then so is Obito. Which means. Madara is still alive. This time, Naruto completed Sasuke's sentence. Hiruzen, who found their conversation highly amusing and smiled at how two completely different people can understand each other, so much. So I'm assuming that you'd want to reconsider my offer then? He asked. If they decide to stay and prevent an apocalypse, then he'd do his best to help them in any way he can. Thanks for the help, Lord Hokage. Naruto said sincerely while Sasuke nodded with the faintest hint of a rare smile, his appreciation for the help. That is good to hear. I have another appointment now. Why don't you both meet me tomorrow morning? We will finalize your rank and other details. I'll make sure to find you a more permanent place to stay until you finish your mission. Those inns sure do charge a lot. Thank you, Third Hokage. Sasuke bowed with respect for all the help the Sarutobi was doing for them. It's alright, Sasuke. It's the least I can do for you both. Naruto left the room immediately without even sparing a look toward Sasuke. Sasuke just shook his head and started towards the door. Sasuke, spare me a minute, will you? The said person stopped in his tracks, holding the door handle when he heard the Sarutobi ask that question. Taking this as his cue to continue, Naruto seemed a lot different from how he was in your memories. From what I learned from yesterday, he had a rough childhood, but he always seemed bright and optimistic. But it's the complete opposite now. Did something happen? He asked, genuinely curious over the sudden change in the blonde's behavior and attitude. Sasuke just turned around to face the Hokage. Flashback. After convincing Hiruzen that they both indeed came from the future, Naruto and Sasuke were let off the hook. The charges of infiltration were overturned by the Hokage himself, personally vouching for them both. They were escorted to an inn in the southern district of the village where the hot springs are located. It was late in the evening by the time they settled in their room. Naruto was sitting on the floor of the room while Sasuke was standing on the balcony connected to the room, staring at the twilight sky. Be prepared to leave any minute tomorrow. The moment we have cleared off all the doubts, we leave this place. Sasuke made his intentions clear. Leave to where? Naruto asked half-mindedly. To where we actually need to go. Our job is far from over. Naruto didn't reply for a minute. He took his time picking his words. Our job will never be over. As long as I'm with you, you won't succeed in saving this world, Sasuke. I'll just get in your way and screw things up. It's better if you do this alone. Sasuke snapped. He had enough of this self-pittance crap. This was no time to go be an emo sucker. They two are the only people who can save this world, and one of them decided to drown and wallow in sorrow. He walked into the room, lifted Naruto up by the collar, and slammed him against the wall with a thud. Why the hell are you talking like this, dope? Snap out of it. I need you. He muttered in annoyance. You don't? You're better off alone. Naruto replied, not meeting Sasuke's eyes. He was staring at the floor in shame. Shame in abandoning his friend while he was asking for help. But it felt like the right thing to do. He couldn't bring himself to trust his actions anymore. Especially after realizing that he was the reason that they ended up in a different timeline. How could he let his emotions get the better of him at a time like that? And what about the promise you made me at the Valley of the End? You said you'd always help me, even if I didn't ask. Sasuke's anger was barely controlled. It was clear in his voice, though he kept it low. I'm sorry. You're sorry? Sasuke asked incredulously. He couldn't believe Naruto was really giving up. Until now, he thought that the blonde was just doubting himself and playing emo. Normally, he would have left Naruto to himself as time would heal those wounds and bring back the normal self. But because he had no time, he had to do something to wake up the whiskered idiot and bring him back to his senses. But he never thought Naruto would give up. Especially on this matter. So you're giving up on everything? The village, the people, your friends. Hinata too. No. I'm not giving up hope. But two just can't act now. I'm afraid that I'll screw up again. We are lucky we have another chance now. But what if we don't have another the next time? I may lose everything and everyone I love forever. Including Hinata. I don't want that to happen. That's why I'm trusting you to complete this task. You're more than capable of finishing this. Naruto said while trying his best not to break in front of Sasuke. Sasuke let go of Naruto. He walked to opposite end of the room and leaned against it facing the blonde. He let out a humorless chuckle which earned him the blonde's attention. It's a good thing Hinata isn't alive to see you betray her. She died believing that you'll bring everything back to normal. Believing you actually loved her. A sly smile still present on his face. It struck a nerve with Naruto. He would agree if someone called him a coward. He would agree if someone would berate him for breaking a promise. He would take on the hatred of everyone in the world if need be, but he wouldn't just stand by if someone doubted his love for his wife. Not even if that someone was a friend who'd give his life for. Take that back, Sasuke. Take that back this instant or you'll regret it, Naruto said. His fists tightened, jaw clenched and teeth ground in pure anger. Sasuke smirked internally. His plan was working. He knew what he said was wrong, but if playing dirty is what it takes to knock some sense into the blonde, then he had no qualms doing that. Sasuke continued as if he didn't hear Naruto's words. I mean, imagine her situation if she found out that someone she admired and loved from her childhood betrayed her trust. She would suffer. Suffer just like I did when I was a kid and didn't know the truth about Itachi. Death is better when compared to something like that. She was lucky in that aspect. How dare you, you bastard. Naruto snapped. He was onto Sasuke in an instant and threw a solid punch towards the face. His fist connected with the Uchiha's jaw, sending him out of the room through the wooden walls. Sasuke flew for a couple of seconds and landed on his back. He knew this was about to get ugly very soon, and if they don't leave this place soon, Tsunade's accusation of them destroying the village might very well become true. Naruto was instantly on top of him and started punching Sasuke's face. "You haven't right to talk about Hinata," he shouted between his punches. His eyes red with dark slits, a look of fury on his face. Sasuke blocked the next punch his hand and opened a portal to another dimension using his Rinnegan. He immediately took hold of Naruto and disappeared into the dimension, a move that made sure the safety of the village wasn't compromised. He reopened the portal when he was sure they were far enough from the village. It looked like a small clearing in the middle of a dense forest. They both landed on the ground with Sasuke on top of Naruto. Sasuke didn't hold back this time. He too began to throw his own share of punches to the blonde's face. "I have a very also. Because like you I didn't give up on Sakura." He then lifted Naruto up with and kicked him in the gut with his knee. The wind got knocked out of Naruto's lungs when the knee landed in his gut. He fell to the ground on his knees holding his gut in pain. He looked up to see Sasuke standing tall in front of him. The next thing he knew, he was sent flying away into a nearby tree, courtesy of Sasuke's kick to his face. The tree's bark shattered due to the impact. His face was sore and his back felt like he might have broken his backbone. But he wasn't giving up. With a burst of speed, he launched himself towards the dark-haired Uchiha and spearing him through 3 or 4 trees before coming to halt. He opened his eyes to realize Sasuke activated his Susanoo. Sasuke was covered by a purple ribsage, the first stage of his Susanoo. His eyes morphed into an all-too-familiar black and red kaleidoscopic star pattern. He caught Naruto with the skeletal arm in one swift swoop. Naruto immediately entered his KCM Kurama chakra mode. He simply overpowered the Susanoo's hold over him with brute strength and freed himself. He produced a chakra arm and caught the Susanoo and flung it away. Sasuke crashed into the trees, effectively clearing a small patch of the woods along his path. His Susanoo was deactivated. He didn't bother reactivating it when he saw Naruto heading towards him at full force. He decided to put an end to this squabble for good. Naruto at full speed landed a clean punch to Sasuke's jaw, an uppercut this time. Sasuke was knocked out clean and realized he was losing consciousness. He couldn't afford to be out cold now. So he fought. He fought against his body to stay awake. At least until he finished what he wanted. He landed on the ground with a thud. He just lay there, not moving an inch like a dead body. Naruto released the KCM and jumped on top of him with his fist cocked back and ready to punch Sasuke into oblivion. Sasuke closed his eyes and waited for Naruto to hit him. He would take it. He crossed his line by taking about Hinata in front of Naruto and knew it was wrong. So he would accept whatever punishment Naruto decided to dish out. And if it's just punches, he would gladly accept it. So he kept waiting, all the while struggling to stay awake. But the punch never came. He slowly opened his eyes to see Naruto in the same position as before, ready to punch. But the change was in his eyes. Tears were flowing down his cheeks freely. But he wasn't crying. They weren't tears of sorrow or grief. No. They were tears of shame, anger, regret. So he kept quiet. He realized Naruto needed to flush these feelings out of him. Only then can the real Naruto emerge. Why? Why Sasuke? Why did you have to say such things? Sasuke smiled. Heal me up, loser. Or I won't last much longer. I don't have a tailed beast inside me to heal my injuries. He said as he coughed up blood. Naruto did as told. He soon got onto healing Sasuke and realized he did a fine job in messing up the Uchiha's anatomy. Sasuke had a dislocated jaw, 3 broken vertebrae and a massive internal bleeding. It took Sasuke almost an hour to return to a functional state. He was by no means alright, but he would settle for now. Sasuke sat against a tree with Naruto across him. He took a deep breath before talking. Tell me, Naruto. Why are you forsaking yourself? Why are trying so hard to walk the down path that I once took? Naruto took his time to respond. He still wasn't able to meet the Uchiha's gaze. You don't understand, Sasuke. I understand better than anyone can. I know how much it hurt to see the people you love die right in front of you. You know that I do. Sasuke retorted back. It's not that. Don't get me wrong, Sasuke. I'm not saying my pain is greater than yours. It's just different. Different how? His question was returned with silence. The only sound heard was that of the blowing wind and rustling leaves. He waited as Naruto's shoulders went rigid, taking a deep breath. Hinata wasn't the only one who died that night. She wasn't alone. What does he mean? Is he referring to Sakura and the others? Sasuke thought but didn't voice his doubts. He would let the blonde say whatever is in his mind. Hinata was pregnant. She was gonna be a mother and I was gonna be a father. Naruto smiled when he said that. A genuine smile which reached his eyes and restored the life which was missing in it for the past few days. That shocked Sasuke, but he did well not show it. His face as stoic as ever. A trait he mastered from his academy days itself. But he didn't miss the spark that returned to Naruto's eyes. His eyes. They are so hopeful, he thought. We were gonna be family. A real family, Sasuke. The blonde, meeting Sasuke's gaze for the first time since they landed in the past. His eyes were bluer than ever. A sign of how happy he was of that thought. Ever since I was a little kid, all I ever wanted was to know about my parents. To know how it feels to be a part of a family. But that didn't happen. And when Hinata broke the news, I couldn't express how happy I was. I was finally gonna be part of family. Something I never had as a child. I decided that I'd be the best father ever. I will never leave my child's side. I spent that whole day thinking about how I will love the child with every ounce of my spirit. That child was my hope. My hope for a brighter future. Something that will erase the dark and lonely past I had. But the life in his eyes left as fast as it came. His face fell, the smile erased. But when that ash bone struck Hinata in her stomach, everything was gone. When Hinata's body crumbled and turned into ash, so did my hopes for the future. I felt like there was no hope for me no matter what my age. I felt like I was 3 years old all over again. All alone. Silence reigned the forest for a while. Not even the sounds of any birds or animals could be heard. Even the air stopped blowing to prevent the leaves from rustling. Naruto kept staring at the ground before while Sasuke looked up the sky. A small star twinkled. Sasuke rose up from his place and started to walk away. He stopped after taking a few steps. Without turning back, he started talking. Hey. I don't know who you are, but do me a favor. If you see a blonde idiot named Naruto Uzumaki, tell him to meet me. He has 3 whisker-like marks on his cheeks, keeps grinning like a total loser, and yells he's gonna be the Hokage. But his most important trait is that he never goes back on his word. Tell him I'll be in an inn near the hot springs in the Hidden Leaf village. I'm sure his kid would feel proud knowing that his or her father saved the world not once but twice. He said and started to resume his walking before stopping once again. And one more thing. Hope doesn't die until you kill it yourself. Hope will continue to remain as long as you strive to protect it. And with that Sasuke left the place, leaving behind an astounded Naruto. Sasuke woke up the next day in his hotel room to find he was the only occupant, so he didn't change his mind. Very well then. I'll do it alone if I have to. I can't waste any more time consoling that loser, he thought. He freshened up a bit and got ready to leave. He then came down the stairs to the lobby of the inn to check out of it. I'll leave with or without him. Consequences be damned, he internally cursed. As he handed the keys over and started to turn around to leave, he was greeted by the sight of Naruto leaning with his back against the wall, his arms crossed and an impassive look on his face. What are you doing here? Sasuke got down to business immediately. His voice was cold as ever. He made up his mind. He was going to do what he needed to do with or without Naruto's help. I wanted to talk to you. Naruto's reply didn't carry a speck of emotion. It was as flat as anything could ever be. His eyes didn't betray his voice either. The normally bright cerulean eyes looked icy blue. I don't have any time to waste. You may have given up, but I've decided to help you. Sasuke didn't expect that. When he woke up to find his room empty, he had given up on Naruto. But it seemed fate did have a twisted sense of humor. Normally, he would have been happy to have his friend back. But the way Naruto looked and sounded wasn't helping him. It felt like he was staring at his 16-year-old self. The same dead eyes and steel voice he had wasn't a good sign. Flashback end. He did have a rough childhood. He was all by himself for more than half his life. And he had to struggle to form bonds with people. He lost his loved ones before too, but he always had someone else to bring him back up. But he lost everything now. Sasuke replied. So did you. Didn't you? I'm used to it. Sasuke said with a melancholic smile before walking out of the Hokage's office, leaving Hiruzen to his thoughts. This flinchit's undeniable. This is real. He said flexing his fingers. He couldn't believe what just happened. He probably wouldn't if he hadn't seen with his own eyes. I feel like I'm in my prime again. Of course you will. Because you really are back in your prime. He didn't pay any attention to the newcomer's words. He was still in a daze over the changes in his body. He punched the air a few times, testing his arm movement. Your movements seem a little rusty, Madara. White Zetsu said, who's standing in a corner of the cave. You're right, Zetsu. But nothing that a good dancing session can't correct. Madara said as he broke the chakra supply pipe between him and the Jito statue. He then faced the newcomer with suspicion. Why are you doing this? As I told you before, our goals just coincided. I didn't do it because I like you or anything. I'd expect you to succeed in this project in return for the favor I did. I couldn't care less about your opinion of me. But if your goal is infinite Tsukiyomi, then why not do it yourself? Clearly, he motioned his hands as if he's showcasing himself, you're more than capable of doing it. I already did this before and doing it a second time is too much of a work for my liking. And it's too boring with you humans interfering in every step. Madara smirked in response. But he was wary of the person in front of him. He may be a prideful person, but he's not stupid. He knew the guy in front of him was strong. He never even imagined that someone as powerful as this could exist. Except for Hagoromo Otsutsuki. But strength isn't everything. Some way or the other, he would be the one to come out on the top this time. Don't underestimate us humans. You may be powerful than us for the time being. But history has proved that we overcame bigger odds than this before. Madara's voice had a wave of confidence. He wouldn't falter even if his opponent was some Otsutsuki. Just don't fail. I'd hate to see my work being wasted. Kagen Shiki said as he opened a portal to leave the cave. Oh, and one more thing. There are 2 other humans from the future who are as strong if not stronger than you whose aim is to prevent what you are planning. Good luck, he thought with a sly smile and disappeared. Do you think we can trust him, Madara? White Zetsu asked, completely oblivious to the tension that was present in the cave a few seconds ago. Trust? Of course not. But he is a resourceful person. So I'll play along for the time being. And once I have my hands on all the tailed beasts, then no one can stop me. It's time for the world to witness the rise of Madara Uchiha. He said, his Rinnegan coming to life. Report. Sir. After they settled in the inn, they both fought each other for a moment before disappearing from the village without a trace. The black-haired person returned back after a few hours in the middle of the night. The blonde guy returned just before the break of dawn. Then they met with the Hokage and the officer. They had privacy seals intact just like the last time. After the meeting, they left the office and just roamed around the village. They are scheduled to meet the Hokage again in the evening. At Hiruzen. He didn't even bother to keep an eye on them. Always trusting people so easily. Looks like I have to get involved directly, he thought. Keep watching them until I order otherwise. Report immediately if anything significant happens. Dismissed. Yes, Lord Danzo. Came the quick reply before the Anbu vanished. What are you planning to do with them, Hiruzen? Danzo thought as he proceeded to make his way out of the Foundation headquarters. What are you planning to do with us, old man? Naruto asked impatiently. He was fed up with all these meetings. You know, Naruto, I'm not that old. I'm still in my early 40s. Hiruzen stated as he released the smoke from his pipe. Naruto just stared back at the Hokage impassively like he didn't care. Sasuke just stood in a corner, leaning against a wall looking with a bored look. He wanted to wrap things up here as soon as possible and set out to find a fellow Uchiha. Well, after giving it a lot of thought and keeping in mind your personalities, I've decided on what rank shall be assigned to you both. Sasuke, I want you to be an Anbu member directly under my command. You won't have to answer to anyone else except me. You'll be given full freedom to do whatever you seem fit. Sasuke just nodded in approval of the Hokage's decision. And Naruto, I'm appointing you as Jonin. And why is that? Naruto was quick to react. He didn't understand what the Sarutobi was trying to do, but he was sensing something was going on. Something which he didn't like. Because I want you to be Jonin sensei for a team of genin. Hiruzen replied. I'm not gonna babysit some brats. Naruto seethed. I'm here for a purpose. Not to run around the village and watch over genin do errands. I can understand that you are disappointed, Naruto. But I'm helping you both going out of my way here. Call me selfish, but I'd like the favor returned. You are a very strong shinobi who can help the future generations become better. Hiruzen tried to sound as serious as possible, all the while controlling his laughter inside. Naruto glared back at the Hokage. He knew the Hokage was just playing, and it annoyed him. But he nodded in agreement nonetheless. He did feel like he owed the Hokage for the help, and it wasn't like he was sticking around forever in this timeline. Once their work is done, he would leave, pronto. And before the Hokage could continue speaking, he noticed his door opening. He wondered who it might be who dared to interrupt him after he expressly denied any intrusions. And before he could guess, Danzo appeared. As soon as Danzo entered the office, he felt a wave of killing intent directed towards him from Naruto and Sasuke. Especially from the latter, which didn't go unnoticed by him. Even the old Sarutobi frowned at Danzo's arrival. "What are you doing here, Danzo?" The Hokage got straight to the point. Something that never happened before between the both of them. "I'm just curious about these two intruders," Danzo said while facing Naruto and Sasuke. He was trying to get a good read on both of them. "They are no intruders. They are shinobi of the leaf." "Since when?" "It's certainly the first time I'm seeing them in the village." "Since they were infants." Hiruzen's voice boomed in the office. Even Naruto and Sasuke were a little surprised at the authority he was displaying. But Danzo's situation was a different story altogether. He never saw Hiruzen talk such harshly to him in his entire life. It was like seeing someone else entirely. He was actually tensed for the first time in many years, but he did well not to show it. Care to explain? "Look, Danzo. I don't interfere with how you run the foundation. So you have no right to question my decisions here. I don't care how you manage your shinobi, Hiruzen. I'm just worried about where their loyalty lies. My concerns are over the safety of the village. They didn't grow up in the village, so you can't blame me for being suspicious. Our loyalty lies with the Hokage in the village. No one else." Sasuke seethed, making his intentions clear. Naruto too walked up to Sasuke and stood beside him, as if to prove that his response was the same. "The Hokage, you say? Then can you tell me how you know them, Hiruzen?" "I found them both as war orphans of the first great ninja war. I took them in and personally monitored their upbringing and training. They may have grown up outside the village, but they are as loyal as anyone can be towards this village. Do you have any more questions?" The irritation in the Hokage's voice was clear. "I see. Looks like my concerns were over nothing. I will take my leave then," Danzo said. But he didn't trust one word of what his former teammate was saying. He had no proof to deny that either. And his foundation operations were crucial now. If Hiruzen suddenly decided to grow a backbone and started to sniff around, then all his plannings and actions would have been for naught. Naruto and Sasuke didn't seem like they were worth the risk. So he just left without another word. Hiruzen sighed when the door was closed. He released a breath which he didn't know he was holding. Even Naruto and Sasuke seemed to relax a bit after the Warhawk's departure. "I hate that shady bastard." Naruto didn't hold back from expressing himself. Sasuke just HMM''d in agreement before speaking. "Hokage, I don't think Danzo bought your story." "I know. But he has no proof to say otherwise. But he'll be a problem in the future. And I won't hold back against him if he tries to interfere in this problem. I suggest you take some action against him before it comes to that." Sasuke's words carried a wave of pure hatred. He would never forgive Danzo for what he did, and killing him any number of times will do nothing to lessen his hatred. "Unfortunately, I can't. I know his methods are shady, but I have no proof of them. And I can't disband it without a proper cause, considering the results his unit has given." "Are results the only thing you care about?" Naruto asked, his voice colder than ever. He didn't expect Hiruzen would cave in so easily. "It's not like that, Naruto. I need the council's approval too. And they need proof. Politics can be a real pain in the ass sometimes." "And what if I find you the proof?" Sasuke asked. "Would you take action then?" Hiruzen was silent for a second. He had to make up his mind, have no other choice. "I can't let things turn out like in Sasuke's memories," and so he decided. "Bring me a solid proof that his doings aren't according to the village's law and I will disband his organization with immediate effect. I can even override the council's decision if I can back my accusations." "Consider it done," Sasuke said with a smirk. He was gonna enjoy destroying Danzo. Again. "Can we leave now?" The blonde's patience wearing out. He had too many unpleasant conversations for his liking and all he wanted to do now was leave this office. "There's one last thing, Naruto." "Here," Hiruzen said, handing a paper to the said person. "This is the list containing the details of your genin team. You'll meet them tomorrow morning in the academy." Naruto begrudgingly started to look at the list. His eyes froze when he read the first name in the list. It took him a while before he continued to go through the other members before handing it back to Hiruzen. "Seriously? He looked annoyed as hell. He would have killed the man in front of him if he wasn't the Hokage, the man who was trying to help them. Sasuke, who watched this exchange, was amused, to say the least. He wondered what made the blonde look so pissed off. He walked up to the desk and took the sheet into hands. A smile graced his face when he read through the names. Well played, Hokage. Well played, he thought. The academy. The place where the next generation of shinobi are made. The place where children learn the ways of a ninja. A place where more than half of the kids in any hidden village begin their journey towards greatness. Well, not everyone will reach their goal. Most of them die before their hair starts to turn gray. Such was the reality of this world. But that didn't stop the younglings from joining the academy in huge numbers every year. Well, at least trying to get admitted. More than 65 to 70% of the kids who give academy trials fail to get through. That leaves around 30% of the aspirants left to progress themselves from just being an aspirant to a full-fledged ninja, provided they pass the graduation exam, which most of them do except for a few UNFORTUNATE debatable kids. And right now, a classroom in the very academy filled with fresh graduates is buzzing with excitement. Kids were talking to each other about how awesome they are going to be once they get into the field, or how they're gonna learn many powerful jutsus and kick the enemy's ass. Everyone's eyes present in the room gleamed with excitement, except for one red-headed girl named Kushina Uzumaki. Kushina Uzumaki wasn't your typical 11-year-old girl. She didn't excel in studies and stood below par in physical combat like the other girls in her class. Quite the opposite, actually. She sucked at studies and excelled in hand-to-hand combat, if you can call it a combat. It was mostly her manhandling every other boy in her class and wiping the floor with them. Her ninjutsu wasn't something to brag about either, while her skill in handling weapons was the bare minimum. She graduated at the bottom of her class, but she had a fire in her. A fire to achieve greatness and prove others wrong. And she had the potential to match her ambition, though barely scratched. And she most certainly didn't fawn over a certain rookie of the year like the rest of the girls. Oh no. She despised him. But in a very unconventional way. As a matter of fact, she was staring at him right now, eyes narrowed and fists tightened from the last bench in the classroom. And he was completely oblivious to the glare he was receiving. Minato Namikaze has always been like that. Oblivious to certain emotions. But ironically, he was a very perceptive fellow. He graduated at the top of his class, excelling at almost everything. His grades were something that no one in the academy's history was able to achieve. He was a prodigy, a genius in the making, a once-in-a-generation talent. Nothing like Kushina Uzumaki. Except for he too had the same dream as her. But he never let any of the praise to his head. He was always smiling and respected everyone, even his peers. The excited murmurs started to fade when the academy instructor walked in with a bunch of papers. The murmurs faded, but not their excitement. It grew even more as they realized what the bunch of papers were. This was the moment they waited for the past few days restlessly. Alright everyone. If you're present in this room, then it means you've all graduated from the academy. You're all ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village now. He said. He wasn't anything special by the looks. He looked like he was in his early 20s. He was of medium height and average build with a fair skin. A proof of lack of fieldwork. But the road only gets tough from here, so don't slack off. Try to improve yourself every day and serve the village to the best of your abilities. I wish you all the very best. He finished his speech to receive a small round of applause from his former students. A small smile graced his lips. He truly felt happy for the appreciation he was receiving. He never liked being a mere instructor, and the only reason he took up this job because he had no other choice. He was declared unfit to do fieldwork on the very first mission as a chunin after 2 years of guard duty. The job of teaching academy students was the only position available for him. So he took. But he never imagined he would actually love his job until this very moment. Settle down everyone. I'm going to announce the teams now. So listen carefully. I won't repeat twice. The classroom went dead silent the next moment. Everyone keenly listening to what their sensei was saying. As he started to announce the teams and their jonin leaders, students whose names have been called out yelled in excitement. Even the usually strict instructor let it slide for this time. But that wasn't the case for Kushina. She was getting nervous with every passing second. She thought she was prepared to face every and any challenge that might come across her. And she was. But she was nervous for a completely different reason. 5 teams have been announced till now, but her name wasn't called out yet. That wouldn't usually be a concern for her because there were still few sheets left in the instructor's hand. The reason for her worry was the other name that hasn't been called out yet. Her self-made nemesis Minato. She was praying to the god that she wouldn't end up in the same team as him. Her heartbeat increased further when both their names weren't present in the 6th team either. Team 7. She heard. She could see the faintest hint of a smile on her sensei's face now. Minato Namikaze, Hanaku Hyuga and Kushina Uzumaki. Your Jonin-sensei is Naruto. Her face grew pale like all the blood had been drained from it when she heard that. What she prayed for not to happen, just happened. She turned her head from the instructor who continued to announce the next team towards the blonde-haired genius and her new teammate. Her gaze narrowed as she watched him exchange a greeting with her other teammate, with the ever-present smile on his face. Minato extended his hand to Hanaku who was sitting right in front him. He had no qualms with his new team, though he was curious who his sensei was. The fact that his sensei's last name wasn't mentioned was noted by him, which made him even more curious. He then turned around to look for his third teammate. He gave a genuine and warm smile when he found her. But he winced under the glare he received in response. He just returned his normal position, facing the instructor. He didn't understand why she always glared at him. Did I ever do something that might have made her mad at me? He thought. Team 10. Shikaku Nara, Inoichi Yamanaka and Chauza Akimichi. Your Jonin sensei is Kasuke Morino. The instructor concluded while collecting his papers and rolling them. Wait here till your appointed Jonin sensei meets you. Farewell. He said and left the room. The murmurs started again, and everyone seemed to meet and sit beside their new teammates. Minato didn't move from his place as he chose to sit with Shikaku, Inoichi and Chauza who were his closest friends. But he did engage in conversations with Hanaku now and then. Hanaku Hyuga was a shy girl. She's always reserved and speaks only when required. Not because she doesn't want to, but because she's just socially awkward. She possessed fair skin and long dark purple hair slightly past her waist and side bangs, framing her face down to her shoulders. Her forehead was plain, a proof that she was from the main branch of the Hyuga family. She was the Kunoichi of the year, excelling in studies and taijutsu. Her ninjutsu wasn't half bad either, but there's nothing much to brag about it either, mainly because of the Hyuga's obsession with their gentle fist style. And it wasn't long before the Jonin started to enter the classroom and call out their team. And every time a Jonin entered the class, Kushina's hopes would rise up expecting her name. But every time her hopes kept crashing. One by one that team started to clear, and within 20 minutes, only 6 members remained in the class. The members of Team 7 and Team 10. Yes, we have lazy senseis. Shikaku drawled, who was sitting beside Minato with his hands behind his head. He looked bored. Bored enough to fall asleep any time now. Maybe they're just busy. I'm sure they aren't intentionally making us wait. Shikaku shook his head with a smile. Always the optimist. Maybe that's why everyone likes you. He said. He had been friends with Minato since the early days of the academy. And though he was used to Minato's behavior, it still amused him. Minato was the only normal person in their group of friends. Well, even Chauza too, but he would go crazy when he gets angry. And Inoichi always had a weird sense of humor. They were quite an interesting group if the instructor's gossips are anything to go by. Minato just smiled, feeling a bit embarrassed by the compliment. He was never good with compliments. Always grounded and humble and hungry to learn more. Although not everyone. Inoichi interjected, gesturing towards the last bench where Kushina was seated. She's your teammate and she didn't make any effort of getting to know you. And the way she glares at you, I don't know if she hates you or is in love with you. Minato and Shikaku had a mix of bemusement and disinclination. Even Chauza stopped munching and stared at Inoichi with a raised eyebrow. What? Some girls have a weird way of expressing their feelings. I'm just saying she might be one of them. Inoichi defended himself. The remaining 3 boys just shook their heads in a disapproving manner. Hanaku too, who heard Inoichi's words, looked a little offended by the generalized statement. But I wonder why she doesn't like you. You never teased her or anything. We are probably the only ones who didn't compare her to a certain vegetable. Chauza spoke for the first time this day. He wasn't much for words unless the occasion calls for it. And before Minato could reply, the classroom door flung open, revealing a tall imposing man in his late 20s. He had sharp and rugged features with short silver hair. He wore a black full-sleeved shirt and black pants with a grey flak jacket. He carried a black trench coat over his shoulder with his left-hand fingers supporting it. I'm Kasuke Morino, his voice deep and his gaze stern. And I'm the designated leader of Team 10. I want the members of my team to step forward. Now. The commanding tone got all 3 of the Ino Shikacho on their feet and standing rigidly in front of him in no time. Kasuke eyed the 3 of them carefully for a minute before sharply turning on his heel. Follow me. He said as he proceeded to walk out of the room. The trio promptly followed him, waving a final goodbye towards their blonde classmate. The room went eerily silent with the presence of only 3 members, each in different benches. Minutes passed rather slowly and there was no sign of their sensei yet. All of them chose to stay silent before Kushina had enough of it. Who does he think he is? Making us wait for this long. I'm gonna pummel him to the ground when I see him, Dadabane. She yelled, standing up from her seat and walking towards the rest of her teammates who looked at her with wide eyes. That look irked her further. She walked up to Minato and stood in front of him with her hands on hips. "What are you staring at, blondie?" She almost seethed. Minato looked terrified by her presence and just shook his in a perfervid manner. She was the only one who could entice such a reaction from Minato. Hanaku was watching this exchange anxiously. This isn't a good start. They are already not getting along well, she thought. She praying her sensei would show up before the argument explodes further. She knew about Kushina's fierce nature and how she didn't hesitate to get physical in these kinds of situations. Her prayers were answered when Naruto walked into the room. He looked even more bored than Shikaku. He was wearing the standard Jonin uniform, dark gray t-shirt with the sleeves slightly rolled up with matching pants and shinobi sandals, and the usual green flak jacket. "Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes," he said, looking at Minato and Kushina, who in turn looked at him curiously before disappearing in a puff of smoke. "The shadow clone?" the three of them thought in unison. Black Zetsu was furious. All the planning he had done over so many years was wasted. It wasn't many years, considering how much time he actually spent on this planet, but it still annoyed him to accept that his hard work went down the drain. All the hopes he had on Madara were destroyed by the sudden appearance of Kagen Shiki. An Otsutsuki no less, just like Kagaya, his mother. He stopped for a second and tried to recollect his previous thoughts. An Otsutsuki just like mother. Should I just confront him and tell him about my plan? Madara is just a pawn for him. No. I shouldn't. Mother told me to trust no one. Damn it. I need to wait and manipulate Madara into doing my bidding. Ah, yes. That will work. I just have to make him trust me and keep away from that Kagen Shiki. It's easy to manipulate him. He is Indra's reincarnation after all, he thought while chuckling internally. He was watching Madara getting into his crimson battle armor from inside the Jito statue, which has been his sanctuary ever since Madara was presumed dead after his fight with Hashirama. Black Zetsu was yet to reveal himself to the former Uchiha patriarch, and that had been a mistake. A mistake which he intends to correct soon. "Wow, Madara. You look like you're ready for some action." White Zetsu said with a stupid grin plastered on his face. "Yes. I have rested long enough. It's time to put my plans into action," Madara said while adjusting his armor's metal plates on his shoulder. "So you're to first?" White Zetsu asked as he watched Madara walks towards the wall where his weapons are present. There were 3 black robes, 2 long katanas, 5 hira shuriken, a scythe and a white gunbai. Madara swiftly reached to grab the gunbai and turned around. "Let's begin with one tail," he said and started to walk towards the exit of the cave. "One tail? But I thought 9 tails was your favorite. Shouldn't you go for that first?" White Zetsu's smile was replaced with a confused expression. "It is. And that's exactly why I will hunt it last. The excitement to see my long-lost pet will make me finish our business with the others faster." As soon as he finished his sentence, a sly smile crept up his face. He punched the huge boulder that blocked the entrance of the cave. The moment his fist made contact with the boulder, a shockwave pulsed through the huge rock before it began to crumble into pieces. When the way was clear, Madara looked at his palm once again and flexed it. "This indeed feels good. I can feel the power surging through me. Time to dance," he thought with a smirk. Naruto leaned against the railing on the roof of the academy. His clone dispelled a few minutes ago and relayed the memories. It was only a matter of a minute or so before his students or more like his parents reached the spot. He still had no clue how to deal with them. He was so caught up in the fact that he'll meet his parents again that he totally forgot there was a third member in that team. "I get to see both mom and dad, but they have no idea who I am. And I'm the adult here while they are kids. This is completely messed up," he sighed, exasperated by that thought. "Damn that old man. He did this on purpose." "Of course he did. I have to give it to him though, he is sly one." Kurama voiced his opinion from the inside. Not helping Kurama, the blonde deadpanned. "Who said I was trying to?" Kurama burst out laughing inside his head. Naruto wasn't in the mood for Kurama's amusement rant, so he cut the mental link. And soon, 3 figures came into his view, but his eyes focused on the blonde and the retreat only. He could see the calm look on his father's face and the fury in his mother's eyes when they were close enough. His heart skipped a beat at the sight of both of them together. He always imagined how they would look like side by side. Though they are still kids now, the picture made him feel a little complete, like it filled a void somewhere in his heart. "You were late. Every team left long before you even showed up." Kushina was quick to react. She always has been. It was in her nature to speak her mind irrespective of the consequences. Naruto just raised his eyebrow and looked at Kushina curiously. "Well, I see why Granny used to say I'm more like my mom. She even more hot-headed than me," he thought and just smiled and observed her. She had a round face, which, with her red hair naturally framing both sides of her face, giving her the resemblance of a tomato. Her attire was a sleeveless kimono-style blouse that was yellow in color and held closed with a green obi over a short-sleeved mesh shirt with a pair of dark blue shorts and brown shinobi sandals. His smile widened at the thought of her pummeling boys who dared to call her a tomato. "What are you smiling about, Dadabane?" she shouted while pointing a finger at her new sensei. Minato was taken back a bit while Hanaku continued to gaze around worriedly. "You waited for merely an hour before you lost your patience. Shinobi missions will require you to stay still without moving an inch for hours at stretch. What will you do then?" Naruto asked with no hint of a smile whatsoever. "I let my emotions make a mess before. I won't let it happen again. And I'll make sure mom doesn't too." The look on Naruto's face almost made her flinch. She froze in her place thinking about how to respond. She gulped when nothing struck her mind. Naruto noticed Kushina's hesitation. He realized he made her think about his previous question. He felt relieved that he was able to achieve it even though he had to be a little harsh. He just ordered them to sit on the stairs for the time being. "Let's just start with the introductions. State your names, likes, dislikes and your dreams. Why don't we start with you first?" he said, pointing his finger lazily towards Kushina. And Kushina, being her usual self, replied back strongly. "It's proper manners to introduce yourself before asking others, sensei." The last word said in a mocking manner. And Naruto was highly amused by this. "Well, that's mom. I guess my name is Naruto Yu." He paused, saying Uzumaki is bound to attract mom's attention. "Better if I don't," he thought before continuing. "I'm your Jonin sensei. I like ramen and my friends. I don't dislike anything in particular. My dream is to protect." His voice betrayed him at that moment. He wanted to say it, but he couldn't. "How can I say it? How can I when I couldn't?" he thought. "Oi brat. This is no time for self-berating. Snap out of it before they get suspicious of you." Kurama's advice was soft and genuine. "My dream is to protect everyone I care about." Naruto finished. He mentally thanked Kurama for the advice. He appreciated the giant fox's support and guidance. He wondered how he would manage if it isn't for the tailed beast. "Now, you go." He motioned for Kushina to start. "My name is Kushina Uzumaki. I like being a shinobi and I hate pompous geniuses who think they are above others," she said, glancing towards Minato for a second, an act which wasn't missed by Naruto, before continuing. "And my dream is to become Hokage." The fire in her eyes didn't betray her voice one bit. She was determined to achieve her goals and she made it clear to her sensei. "Am I missing something? Dad was a genius, sure, but he wasn't a stuck-up. At least that's what I heard. And why does it look like mom hates him?" "That's Kushina for you. She was always like this. Fierce, bold and a bit too loud. And yes, Minato isn't a stuck-up. Their relation is somewhat similar to how you and the Uchiha brat were. Remember how you hated his guts for being better than you? It's like deja vu." Naruto ignored the chuckling fox and took in the new information. It makes sense now. She just wants to prove herself. This is going to be fun. "Minato. It's your turn." He took in Minato's appearance with a quick look. Minato wore a white tracksuit with 3 stripes on the sleeves, mesh under armor, a pair of black pants, and sandals. He's not as imposing as he is as an adult, but he's tall for an 11-year-old. At least taller than me when I was his age. Minato smiled and nodded before he began to talk. "I'm Minato Namikaze. I like reading books. I don't hate anything in particular either. My dream is to become the Hokage just like my new teammate here and keep the village safe." Naruto just smiled in return. He liked the way Minato spoke. Soft yet determined. Short and simple yet powerful. He felt like he was back to being a fanboy of the Leaf's 4th Hokage during his childhood. Pushing his thoughts aside, he turned to face the last member of the team. Next, his movements froze. He felt like his world tilted upside down when he faced her. Those pearlescent eyes with a hint of lilac, the dark purple hair, it was unmistakable. "Hey Hinata." His breath hitched as he barely managed to whisper the name. A lump formed in his throat and he almost choked. He shut his eyes hard. "No. I won't let my emotions get the better of me again." Never again. He tried to calm himself, but flashes of Hinata's memories kept passing through his mind. Her eyes. Her hair. Her face. "The days just kept getting worse for me." All 3 fresh genin had worried looks on their faces. They weren't understanding what was happening with their new sensei. One minute he was listening intently with a smile, and the next second, he would frown with a disturbing look. "Oi Naruto. Calm down. You're making a scene." Naruto didn't even listen to what Kurama was saying. He hated his luck. Why does fate have to be so cruel? He thought. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He cleared his mind of any lingering thoughts and stiffened himself. "Sorry about that. The wind, it's heavy today. Anyways, next." He said, looking away from the Hyuga girl. He decided not to meet her gaze. It would do him no good if he tried to. Hanaku stared at Naruto for a second and nodded. "I'm Hanaku Hyuga. I like my village and my family. I don't hate anything either. My dream is to see the world prospering in peace without any wars." "Hanaku? She's Hinata's mom then?" The resemblance made much more sense now and that much harder for him to deal with them. He was related to every member of his team in one way or the other. He thought he could hold back his emotions as long as he was here, but it seemed the task was getting harder every second. That's a very interesting dream, Hanaku. I too hope we can achieve it someday. Naruto said with a forced smile. He couldn't help but be uncomfortable looking at Hanaku. She was like a painful reminder of Hinata. A reminder of his failure. You're an interesting bunch of brats. That's it for today then. He said as he started to leave before paused. One more thing. You'll have a survival exercise tomorrow. If you fail that, then you'll be sent back to the academy. He didn't say like it was a threat. But it didn't sound like it was something to be taken lightly either. He sounded as if he didn't care if they fail. What? Kushina yelled. Hanaku stared at Naruto with wide eyes and her hands covering her mouth. Minato frowned. You have no right to send us back to the academy. We already graduated. Kushina continued. She was angry alright. On the contrary, I do. I make the rules and you follow them. And remember, don't eat breakfast or you'll puke. Sharp 6 in the morning at training ground 10. He said with his back face to the genin while walked away from them. Let's see if they can do better than us back in the day. Kakashi-sensei's way is truly frightening and awesome at the same time. Tomorrow should be fun. I take it you want to leave right away and get started. Yes. We can't afford to waste any time. The sooner we find him, the better. His voice was a bit muffled due to the presence of a mask. And do you any particular location to search for? Or will you start off in some random direction? There's one place I will check first. The mountain's graveyard. It was Obito's secret hideout. I'm not sure but there's a possibility that Madara might be there. Hiruzen just nodded in agreement. That sounded like the most logical thing to do. One last question before you leave. Sasuke remained silent and the Hokage took it as his cue to continue. Why the crow mask? I thought you'd prefer a hawk. Sasuke drew a deep breath through his porcelain crow mask, which had purple streaks on its sides. He was clad in the Anbu uniform, the grey flak jacket and arm guards, along with boots instead of sandals and a chakudo instead of the usual tanto. A tribute to my elder brother who sacrificed everything for this village. I see. I have nothing else to ask or to say to you, Sasuke. Just don't go overboard with your power. No one had seen the true power of Manjutsu Sharingan since the time of Madara and the Rinnegan ever. And since you'll be searching not only in the Land of Fire but also in other nations, it's better if you keep a low profile, especially since you're a shinobi of the leaf now. I don't want another war to deal with. He let out a light-hearted chuckle at the end, trying to convey his sad predicament to Sasuke. I'll try my best to use as less force as possible, but I can't promise things won't get out of hand either. It's Madara we are talking about. Sasuke's reply was flat. He said those but he didn't sound like he meant them. Hiruzen sighed at the Uchiha's response. He was sure this was bound to bring some trouble, but he can't back down now. And could you tell the same to Naruto too? You're the best person to talk to him given his condition. You're free to leave whenever you are ready after that. Lord Hokage, I wanted to ask you something. Of course. What is it? Why? Why bind Naruto to his parents? Is it because you pity him for growing up as an orphan? Or is it because you think Naruto is strong and he'll train them better? Naruto is already suffering and seeing his parents now would only reopen some old wounds. He got over their deaths and had a closure back then. Spending time with them might affect him in more than one way. He might flat out reject their presence to shield himself or might grow bonds which he eventually has to break once our work here is done. So why? Out of all the questions, Hiruzen wasn't expecting this. He took Sasuke's smile as a good sign yesterday. Was his decision wrong? He did think about what Sasuke just said before, but his reasons seemed to outweigh the cons. But now, hearing the same thing from a different person seemed a lot worse. He decided to voice his reason and act according to Sasuke's response. After all, Sasuke knew Naruto better than he did. That most definitely wasn't my intention, Sasuke. Quite opposite in fact. From what you said yesterday, Naruto seems a little broken. He lost faith in himself. The reason I put him in charge of that particular team was to help him gain his lost faith. What better way to prove his thinking is wrong than to hear it from the very people he admires and loves? Minato is a perceptive child, very much like you. He can see through people. And Kushina isn't one to hold back her words. My intention was that Naruto will realize his mistake in closing himself off through his parents. But if you think this won't work and might have the opposite effect, I will change his rank. I don't want to cause him any more harm than he already suffered. No. That won't be necessary. I think your way might exactly be the thing we need for Naruto to return his usual self. Sasuke replied smirking under his mask, which of course wasn't visible to anyone. Hiruzen let out a sigh of relief. He was visibly eased after hearing Sasuke's response. His plan wasn't a total failure. For now at least. But he decided to be more careful with their team. The last thing he wants is a Jinchuriki from a different timeline running wild in his village because he couldn't handle the emotional weight and snapped. Thank you for your faith. You may leave if you don't have anything to ask. Sasuke just nodded back and disappeared in a blur. Kushina was upset. She was borderline mad and wanted nothing more than to beat the living daylights out of the person who upset her. And it was no surprise it turned out to be her new sensei. Yes. And she hated Naruto's guts. Even more than Minato. Maybe not. No one annoyed her more than Minato. She wished nothing more than to wipe the smile off the younger blonde's face herself. But the older blonde wasn't far behind. Stupid blondes. Stupid sensei. She kept muttering while walking back to her home. And much to her annoyance, the path to her home was barren. Not one person could be found in her visual range. She wanted to lash out at someone and let her frustration out. But fate wasn't kind enough for her. Naruto. What kind of stupid name is that? Who is dumb enough to name their child Naruto? She kept talking out loud until she stopped for a second. Who is dumb enough? She actually started to entertain that thought. Minato is dumb enough to do that. Yeah, he most certainly is. But how could the mother agree such to a thing? She must be dumber than Minato. I guess. She giggled out loud, covering her mouth with her hands. That brought a smile to her face. She felt like all her frustration was gone. This is interesting. I didn't even have to beat anyone this time and I feel better than ever. Maybe I'll just scold at Minato and stupid sensei from the next time. Yeah. It's better than beating up other boys. She said out loud again as she reached the entrance to her house. She turned the doorknob and entered inside with a satisfied smile on her face. A pretty rare occurrence. Unknown to her, a shadow followed her on the way. The person stopped a good 50 meters away from her house. Far enough not to be caught, but close enough to keep a watch on her. He was sitting on a branch of a tree, leaning against the trunk with his knees close to his chest. He was depressed. Ha 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 ha. I told you it was a bad idea to follow her. Are you happy now? Ha 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 ha. Kurama couldn't control his laugh. He was having a field day with his amusements. I never thought mom could be so mean. Naruto mumbled internally. What did you expect after dropping the bomb like that? Hoo-hoo. Joke's on her then. She too agreed with my name. Exactly why this is even funnier. Kurama's laughter didn't seem to die down anytime soon. They are supposed to love each. Not fight like this. At least dad is being polite towards this. This might be a serious problem if it continues for long though. If they don't end up together, then you won't be born. And your existence will be erased from this timeline. The fox's voice lost all its playfulness. It was serious and it meant business. What? What do you mean? Naruto was alarmed. How could he not? He just heard he could die. Calm down. As of now, Kushina and Minato are still destined to be together. Your existence is the proof of that. Your presence in their lives didn't affect that. But if too many changes take place and their fates change and they don't end up together, you won't be born in the future. And if that happens, your mere existence is a paradox in nature and… Hey. Use simple words will ya? Kurama deadpanned but complied nonetheless. If you interfere too much with them, you will die. Let the natural progression of time flow be undisturbed and you must be alright. Get it? Yeah. Don't interfere with their lives. Let it happen as it did in the past. Good. And how do you plan on dealing with the other problem? What other problem? Don't tell me you forgot. She's a Jinchuriki just like you. She has me inside of her as well. I'm sure the other me has sensed our presence already. If the other notifies Kushina about us, then we'll have a shitstorm on our hands to deal with. Damn. How could I forget about that? Naruto thought seriously. This really was a big problem. Problems seemed to pile up every passing second and he had no idea how to deal with them. At least Kurama was being helpful. Wait a minute. You said you didn't have a very good relationship with mom when you were inside of her. Even if the other you tell her about it, mom wouldn't believe and brush it off aside. That idea eased him a little. He was glad Kurama was a spiteful beast for once. True. But I wouldn't relax just yet. The other me might just cooperate with Kushina for once to learn the truth. I always hated being left out in the dark about anything and did things which surprised even me. And just like that, all the worry which left a few seconds ago returned back. He hated Kurama for being a spiteful stuck-up. What the hell am I supposed to do now then? He was tired of thinking about all the problems. I have an idea but it's risky. Very risky in fact. But it also might the best chance of hiding our true identities. What it is? Naruto almost sounded excited. It was possibly the first positive reaction Kurama observed in Naruto after Hinata's death. It brought him a little hope that Naruto didn't completely change and there is a chance for his old self to be back. Reveal the truth to my other self. Tsukumo was confused. He was never this confused in his 25-year lifespan. First, two mysterious people show up out of the blue on the verge of the death. The Hokage confesses they both are stronger than him or any other Kage for that matter. Then he suddenly starts trusting them both than anyone else around and lets them roam around the village scot-free, and to top this all off, he sends one of his best jonin out of the village to find his perverted student, leaving only one active Sannin in the village. This the worst possible scenario the village could be in. But he would never voice his concerns out loud. He trusted his Hokage enough and knew Hiruzen had a good sense of judgment. Konoha didn't come out on the top in the second ninja war solely because they had strong shinobi. The tactfulness of Hokage is what won the war for them. So he would just obey his orders and carry out his mission as always. And he also doubted that Hiruzen had some plan in his mind if he is trying to find Jiraiya of all people. And don't get him wrong. He respected Jiraiya as a fellow ninja. He couldn't deny the strength and ability the Toad Sage possessed. But he couldn't believe how big of a pervert he was either. That man has no sense of shame whatsoever, he thought while searching for the said person in Tenzaku Town's crowded streets. He knew this place was the best bet to find Jiraiya. After all, this place was famous for its gambling centers and women. It's been already half a day since he entered the town and covered more than half of it without any sign or word of Jiraiya. Just when he about to think of any other place where he could find his fellow white-haired man, he heard a familiar laugh. Ha ha ha. And then with one hit, I sent that sand ninja flying into trees. And he was my 50th victim that day. Really? 50? I find that number rather hard to believe. Said a woman in a sultry voice. Oh, but it is the truth, darling. Jiraiya is no lair. Ha ha ha. And that's when Tsukumo decided he heard enough to confirm his suspicions. And he promptly entered to witness the scene of Jiraiya's face snuggling between a woman's rather gifted chest. Oh my god. Jiraiya. Have some respect towards the three prohibitions, will you? Tsukumo said in a disgusted tone. He just turned around not to face the pervert or the poor woman who had to survive among such perverts. Jiraiya just lifted his head to see the source of the voice that decided to interrupt the moment. He immediately recognized the white hair and the sword that was strapped on the back. Tsukumo. Are you here to enjoy as well? This couldn't get any better. I'll call for more women. Just wait. No, Jiraiya. I'm here to take you back to the village on the Lord Hokage's orders. Get up and let's leave. Tsukumo said, still facing away from him. Jiraiya's face faltered. He slumped his shoulder and started to sulk with a mock pout. That old geezer has no sense of timing. I told him I was on a vacation. But he soon lost his pout and sat in his defiantly. Tell him I refuse to come. I will return only after I complete my vacation in this heaven. I can't leave this poor angel alone, can I? He said while tickling the woman's chin, to which she responded by giggling. Jiraiya. This is not the time. We might have a problem. A problem bigger than the war. Tsukumo's voice was low, but it had the desired effect on Jiraiya. Jiraiya knew Tsukumo very well. Tsukumo was one of the most trusted people by Hiruzen apart from the Sannin. Not only that, but Tsukumo was the perfect representation of the will of fire. Strong, loyal, kind and fierce. And when Tsukumo says something, he means it. If he's as serious as he is now, it really does mean a bigger problem than war. He immediately stood up from the purple velvet sofa, causing the woman who was leaning on him to fall onto the furniture. Let's go then. He said as he walked up to the White Fang. And what is this problem you talk about? He continued as he lifted the flaps of the establishment to exit the building. Well, it started when two shinobi around 20 years ended up on the Hokage mountain with severe injuries. What if Hagoromo gave all chakra to Naruto Sasuke bashing, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys next video.